Chapter 2019. There were a total of 80,000 demon clan citizens, and most of them were women, children, and the elderly. They knelt respectfully in the square, lined up neatly. Their foreheads were pressed against the ground as they prayed in unison. Even though it was snowing heavily and the ground was covered in thick ice, they were still praying. It was as if they didn't feel anything as they kowtowed with a devout expression. Such a scene shocked Luoli greatly. She had also seen the scene of thousands of people worshipping in the Luoshui kingdom. However, it was extremely rare for the demon clan to be so devout and fanatical. Ji Tianqing had long known that every tribe of the demon clan had an altar. Every year at a fixed time, the demon clan would hold a grand sacrificial event. This was the custom of the demon clan, and there was nothing strange about it. However, it was rare to see all the men, women, and children of the entire tribe come out today. Moreover, the demonic patterns on the altar and the steeple gave him a sense of déjà vu. The three Tribulation Realm powerhouses were obviously the chief and priest of the tribe. They led hundreds of primordial soul realm powerhouses and jointly used the demon clan's secret technique to draw the power of the 80,000 demon clan citizens and gather it in the altar. The formation in the altar was activated, and the invisible mysterious power was released through the steeple, which formed the soaring bloody light. Ji Tianqing frowned and observed for a while. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind, and his expression changed drastically. God's sacrifice? God investiture sacrifice. He suddenly remembered the scene he saw on the first level of the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. A mysterious altar was built in the square, and the statues of the Yin-Yang saints stood tall. 100,000 demon clan and human clan citizens were worshipping them, providing them with the power of faith to help them become gods. The scene in front of him was also 80,000 demon clan citizens worshipping them devoutly and releasing the power of faith. The demonic patterns on the altar and the steeple were the divine patterns of the people's god investiture technique. At this moment, Luoli and Yun Yao noticed that Ji Tianqing's expression was strange, and they turned to look at him. Luoli was puzzled and wanted to ask, but she was embarrassed. Yun Yao asked, "Tianqing, did you discover something? Why are these demon clan members holding a sacrifice? Who are they worshipping?" Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows. His face was solemn as he explained in a low voice, "Only their ancestor can make the demon clan worship him like this." Yun Yao immediately understood and asked worriedly, "You mean they are worshipping the ancestor demon god?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It's not just worship. The ancestral devil god used the life god sealing art to carve devil patterns on the altars and minarets, using them to absorb the power of faith of the people. Although this is very troublesome, I am certain that the ancestral devil god has already planned this. Most of the thousands of demon tribes had such altars. The ancestral fiend celestial was clearly very anxious. He was not satisfied with the recovery speed of secluded cultivation. It wants to use the life god sealing technique to recover its strength as quickly as possible." Upon hearing this, Yun Yao's pupils constricted. Her heart was filled with anxiety and worry. She did not doubt Ji Tianqing's words. However, Luoli was confused. She furrowed her brows and asked, "Ji Tianqing, what are you talking about? What life god sealing art? What's with the power of faith?" Ji Tianqing glanced at her and patiently explained, "I believe you have already heard of the ancestral devil god's origin and strength. In the ancient god war, the ancestral devil god slaughtered countless gods, and gods of various races fell. In the end, goddess Yao Guang sacrificed herself to kill the ancestral devil god." Luoli nodded and said, "Of course I know. The ancestral devil god of the ancient era was even stronger than goddess Yao Guang. Yao Yao inherited the inheritance and memories of goddess Yao Guang, so she can be considered the reincarnation of goddess Yao Guang. She and the ancestral devil god can be considered enemies. However, what exactly is the life god bestowment technique that you mentioned?" Ji Tianxing said in a calm tone, "This is a mysterious and profound divine art. You won't understand even if I explain more." Luoli furrowed her brows and glared at him with cold eyes. Ji Tianxing pretended that he did not see it and continued, "Simply speaking, it is a divine art that helps experts gather the power of faith and quickly increase their strength. The ancestral devil god is the ancestor of the demon race, and all of the demon race's citizens worship him devoutly. Hundreds of thousands, or even millions of demon race's power of faith gathered together is immeasurable." Luoli suddenly understood and nodded. "So that's how it is. I have read about the introduction and description of the power of faith in ancient books. It is said that in the ancient era, the gods of various races would protect their citizens and would often perform miracles to gain the support and worship of their citizens. Over time, the people would imperceptibly gather a strong power of will for the gods. The stronger the power of the gods, the more citizens they would be able to rule and obtain a stronger power of faith. From the looks of it, the power of faith is the power of faith?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "That's right." Luoli thought for a moment and felt that something was wrong. She sized up Ji Tianxing with a sharp gaze. "Ji Tianxing, even I don't understand these illusory myths and legends. How do you know about these ancient secrets? How do you know them so well?" Luoli knew that Ji Tianxing was not an ordinary person and must have some extraordinary aspects. She was also very suspicious of Ji Tianxing's identity and wanted to find an opportunity to investigate it. Unfortunately, the person who knew his identity the best was martial god Luo Shui. However, Luo Shui martial god didn't reveal a single word about his identity and background. Ji Tianxing glanced at Luoli and said expressionlessly, "There are so many things in the past and present that are all in books. If you are stupid, you should read more. Don't just ask questions all day." Luoli was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her eyebrows twitched and her pretty face turned pale. If not for Yun Yao's presence, she really wanted to kick him. Her anger towards Ji Tianxing had eased a lot. Now it had soared to the peak again. God. Fine. Why would Yao Yao like a jerk like you?" Luoli was furious and cursed with her eyebrows raised. In her desperation, she forgot to use divine telepathy and cursed directly. Moreover, her emotions were too intense, and her hidden aura also fluctuated. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianxing immediately cursed inwardly. Sure enough, a few exclamations sounded from the altar beneath the three of them. The chief, priest, elders, and more than 10 Essence Soul Realm experts all sensed the abnormal aura fluctuations. Everyone looked up at the sky and glared at Ji Tianxing and the other two. A strong murderous aura rushed towards the three of them. Although Ji Tianxing and the other two were still invisible, they had already been exposed. The chief, who was wearing a purple robe and had a head of red hair, waved his scepter and gave the order. Chapter 2020. Following the tribe chief's order, dozens of demon warriors rose into the air. The crowd spread out and charged toward Ji Tianxing and the other two with swords and halberds, surrounding the area. At the same time, the tribe's priests and elders joined forces to cast spells, shooting out hundreds of blood rays that scattered around the square. Swoosh! A large formation with a radius of 20 miles was suddenly activated. The surging demonic power formed a huge blood-light shield that covered the entire square. Ji Tianxing, Luoli, and the other two were instantly trapped by the blood-light shield. The sudden upheaval awakened countless people in the square. Although they were still kneeling on the ground, they all looked up at the sky with complicated expressions. Some people did not know what was going on and were confused. Some people heard the words "foreign invasion" and were filled with anger and murderous intent. In the eyes of the demon people, no matter who it was, disturbing their worship of their ancestor was a great sin worthy of death. Especially the foreign race, who dared to invade the Moonless tribe's sacred land, was even more heinous. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing secretly sighed in his heart. Sigh, this group of demons is going to be in big trouble again. Luoli is now in a berserk state, I'm afraid the entire tribe will be slaughtered by her. He was not concerned about the life and death of the demons, but he felt that if he continued to bicker with Luoli, it would definitely cause a bigger commotion. In this way, even if they wanted to keep a low profile, it would be impossible to hide their whereabouts. Just as he was thinking to himself, the dozens of primordial soul realm demon masters had already arrived in front of him. The blood light formation that covered the entire square also activated a powerful force, releasing a demonic fog that covered the sky and earth. Ji Tianxing and the other two were hidden in the sky. After being shrouded by the black demonic fog, a faint outline immediately appeared. This was the unique effect of the demonic formation, which was most effective against the foreign race. After all, the foreign race could not devour and absorb demonic aura, so of course they had nowhere to hide. The dozens of demon masters immediately discovered the position of Ji Tianxing and the other two and roared excitedly, their eyes revealing a bloodthirsty light. Kill! They're there! You three insolent worms, prepare to die! Tear them into pieces and blast them into pieces! How dare you intrude into our moonless tribe, you're courting death! Roars of rage and battle cries reverberated in the air above the square. More than 40 demon masters waved their swords, spears, and halberds, releasing a magical brilliance that covered the sky and earth, Ji Tianxing and the other two. The three of them naturally would not sit and wait and immediately launched a counterattack. Luoli took the lead and charged toward the demon masters with a murderous aura. Since her whereabouts had already been exposed, she might as well reveal her true form. Like an icy blue flame, she started a massacre in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. She waved her palms, her slender fingers flicking repeatedly, shooting out thousands of ice-blue sharp blades, enveloping the demon experts. Those essence soul realm fiends were as weak as paper in her hands. None of them could withstand a single strike from her. Even if it was just a ray of sword chi or a ray of ice and fire, it was enough to kill those demon masters. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao did not rest either. They took out the Burial of Heaven and the Water Reversal Divine Sword and slashed out dazzling giant swords, fighting with the demon warriors. Boom, boom, boom. The two sides fought fiercely. All kinds of colorful magical brilliance collided fiercely in the sky, causing deafening loud noises. However, there was a great disparity in strength between the two sides. In just a few breaths, more than 40 demon masters were killed by Ji Tianxing and the other two. Many pieces of corpses and purple and black demon blood fell on the square like a torrential rain. Countless people cried out in alarm, revealing fear and worry in their eyes. However, more people were not afraid. Instead, they were even more indignant. They did not run away in a panic. They still knelt on the square, maintaining a posture of worship. In the hearts of the demon people, their own safety was far less important than worshipping their ancestors. They saw that Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luoli were actually so powerful. The chief, the priest, and the elder looked at each other with a solemn expression. The three of them no longer hesitated. They held their weapons and magic treasures and rushed into the sky without care for their own safety, killing Ji Tianxing and the other two. The remaining 50 or so essence soul experts also hurriedly followed and attacked Ji Tianxing and the others. Everyone fought in the sky above the square. The battle was very tragic. There were demon masters controlling the formation, releasing powerful pressure and all kinds of attacks, constantly attacking Ji Tianxing, Luoli, and the other two. There were also some demon masters who saw that the situation was not good. They took the time to send out messages, asking for help from the nearby tribes and higher-level cities. But no matter what, the Moonless tribe could not resist the massacre of Ji Tianxing and the other two. As the battle progressed, one demon master after another was blasted into pieces, sprinkling a rain of blood all over the sky. After a short period of 20 breaths, more than 50 demon warriors also died in battle. The tribal chief, priest, and elder were also injured. Only then did they realize that the strength of Ji Tianxing and the other two was beyond their expectations. Ji Tianxing and Luo Li's strength had both reached the martial sage realm. They were not opponents that they could fight against. If they continued to fight, everyone would be killed. Therefore, the tribal chief, priest, and elders secretly communicated and quickly made up their minds. The tribal chief waved his scepter and shouted with grief and indignation, "People of the Moonless tribe, the lowly humans have invaded and killed our people. They even tried to destroy the altar of our ancestors. Our tribe has encountered such a disaster. None of us can sit still and wait for death. It's time to show the iron blood and pride of our tribe. For the dignity of our tribe, for the glory of our ancestors, we will fight to the death." The tribal chief's hair was disheveled and his body was covered in blood. He looked very miserable. The tens of thousands of demon people were already filled with grief and indignation. They could not hold back their anger and killing intent. Hearing the tribal chief's call, everyone stood up and took out their swords and weapons. They charged toward Ji Tianxing and the other two without any regard for their own safety. The tens of thousands of people in the square attacked them without any regard for their own safety. The overwhelming brilliance of spells instantly covered the sky and flooded the entire square. As the saying went, many ants could bite an elephant to death. No matter how strong Ji Tianxing and the other two were, it would be difficult for them to escape in a short time. The three of them could only be cautious and defend with all their might. They used all kinds of secret techniques to kill the demon people. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already experienced such a big battle. They had even fought with a 1,000,000-strong demon army. Luo Li was born noble, and had always been active in the Luo Shui God Kingdom. When had she ever seen such a scene? She was shocked and angry. She fought with all her might and did not leave any leeway. In a short period of time, she had killed thousands of demon people. She was really covered in blood like a goddess of death. Chapter 2021. Although Luo Li had a high status, and was the most trusted female official of the Luo Shui martial god, she held the power of life and death. Moreover, she was also a martial saint and could destroy mountains and rivers with a flick of her finger. However, she had always been pampered and rarely went into battle to kill the enemy. Today, she was besieged by tens of thousands of demons and had to fight a bloody battle. This was the first time she had experienced such a thing. Her emotions were very complicated. She was shocked, angry, and somewhat excited. In short, her emotions were a little out of control. She was not as calm as before. The crazy killing, the flying corpses and blood, and the ferocious and fanatical expressions of the demons deeply stimulated her. The more she killed, the more excited she became. She actually forgot about Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, and also forgot her original intention of entering the North Underworld Mountain. There was only one thought left in her mind. That was to kill all the demons in front of her and eliminate all evil. Today, every time she killed a demon, the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom would have one less enemy in the future. Yun Yao was also fighting a bloody battle. She was besieged by hundreds of demons and could not escape in a short time. Even the glazed fire dragon and the black dragon joined the battle. They spat out overwhelming dragon breaths, waved their huge dragon claws, and wantonly slaughtered those crazy demons, destroying the square and the altar. The aftermath of the battle quickly destroyed the defensive array of the square and affected the entire tribe. One after another, houses and palaces turned into ruins and dust in the destructive shockwaves. The disaster of the Moonless tribe had really arrived. However, the fanatical demon race commoners continued to send themselves to their deaths, as if they didn't know what fatigue was and didn't know what fear was. The people and fanatical believers of the ancestor demon god would bite off a piece of the enemy's flesh even if they were smashed to pieces. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Even if there were as many as 100,000 demons, they could not hurt Luo Li and Yun Yao. Even if the 100,000 demons were like ants, Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the 2 dragons were elephants made of steel. Originally, Ji Tianxing was also on a killing spree. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and waved out sword lights that covered the sky as if he had entered an uninhabited land. In a short period of time, he killed thousands of demons. No one was a match for him at all. However, he had been secretly paying attention to the movements of the tribe chief, priest, and elder. He knew very well that those 3 people were the strongest in the tribe. As long as those 3 powerhouses were killed, the Moonless tribe would be doomed. However, he did not expect that the demons, who had always been brave and fearless of death, would actually run away. Heh! It seems like these 3 fellows are different from the ordinary demons. Ji Tianxing sneered and immediately turned into a stream of light, passing through the numerous obstacles and encirclement, leaving the square. Heezazazaz. After chasing them for 500 kilometers, he finally caught up to the chief and the elders on top of a mountain range. Gods, his demon, demon, God his, of the god of hell, god of God, and his of God his, of course. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed, and he teleported 10 miles away, blocking in front of the chief and the elder. He stood proudly in the sky. His left hand formed a sword seal, and his right hand held the sword of burial of heaven. He stared coldly at the tribal chief and elder. Humph! As the chief and elders of the tribe, they actually fled in the face of battle, and let the 100,000 tribesmen die just to escape for their own lives. You 2 are so cunning and despicable, you're really giving the demon race face? Ji Tianxing's sarcasm made the chieftain and the elders feel so ashamed that they were unable to show their faces. Their eyes and expressions were all evasive. However, the elder quickly put away his shame and stared coldly at Ji Tianxing. He shouted angrily, "Human brat, you have no right to laugh at us. We are neither weaklings who are stubborn and pedantic, nor are we fanatical and brainless believers. Why should we make unnecessary sacrifices?" As an expert and a leader, he naturally had to assess the situation and know when to advance or retreat. If he really didn't care about his own life, who would have been able to survive until now? Even you can't do that. Although the elder's words were a truth that everyone in the martial arts world understood. But coming from the mouth of a demon expert, Ji Tianxing still had a whole new level of respect for him. Haha! I really didn't expect that the demon race is gradually changing their views. A tribal elder can also say such words. Looks like the demon race is becoming more and more cunning and treacherous. The chief glared at him and said expressionlessly, knowing that the enemy is too strong, but still going to die, this is not loyalty and bravery, but stupidity. Those old, weak, women, and children are all devout believers of the ancestor. Even if I send them to die, they will die a worthy death with no regrets. However, I can't die on the spot. I have to live on and avenge my dead people. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said coldly, although the idea is good, it can only be an extravagant hope. You have no chance. The chief was not afraid at all. He grinned coldly and said, Is that so? Brat, you're too arrogant. Ji Tianxing looked askance at him and said with murderous intent, Arrogant, is it? Ha ha ha, all of the demon race people will die today without a doubt. And the 2 of you will also be buried here. In less than an hour, the entire tribe will be reduced to ashes. The 2 of you can say your last words. As his voice sounded, an invisible majestic domineering aura spread out in the sky. The chief of the tribe was also intimidated, but he did not back down. He sneered and said, I admit that your strength is very strong, and we are not your match. However, it's not that easy for you to kill us. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if you kill us, the high priest has already left the Moonless tribe and went to Black Sun City to report the news. Brat, you and those 2 women will have to bear the anger and revenge of my clan. What awaits you will definitely be the outcome of being smashed to pieces and the extremely cruel torture of the divine soul. After saying that, the chief and elders took out their weapons and magic treasures, casting spells to attack Ji Tianqing from both sides. Triple Een God-slaying blade. Blood light illuminates the firmament. The elder held a pair of strange-looking sharp blades in his hands, stabbing out 9 black and red blade lights, attacking Ji Tianqing with all his strength. Before the blade lights arrived, waves of bone-chilling wind attacked, shaking Ji Tianqing's divine soul, as if to freeze his divine soul. The chief of the tribe waved his blood-colored scepter, releasing a blood light that covered the sky and earth, turning into a few terrifying hurricanes, sweeping towards Ji Tianqing. The power of each bloody hurricane was enough to crush mountains, rivers, and earth, and grind everything into dust. Once Ji Tianqing was swallowed by the bloody hurricane, he would have to pay a heavy price to escape. However, just as the chief and elders joined forces to attack, he also mercilessly counterattacked. Heavenly Dragon Palm. Heaven-breaking sword. He roared with murderous intent, raising his left palm and striking out 2,000 feet long golden divine dragons, blasting towards the Triple Een God-slaying blade and the moonless elder. Chapter 2022. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds exploded in the sky, shaking the heavens. The Triple Een God-slaying blade was defeated by the 2 heavenly dragons on the spot. It exploded into pieces and scattered in the sky. The power of the 2 heavenly dragons did not decrease and hit the elder hard. The elder was covered in blood and flew back in a sorry state. At the same time, the bloody hurricane released by the tribal chief was also shattered by the giant sword. He was hit by the giant sword before he could dodge. Boom! Following a muffled explosion, his tall and sturdy body was cut in half on the spot. Dark purple demon blood, mixed with colorful internal organs, sprayed out immediately. The tribal chief did not expect that he would be defeated by Ji Tianqing in one move and his body would be destroyed. The body of a demon powerhouse had always been abnormally strong, enough to look down on the world. However, in front of Ji Tianqing, the tribal chief was like a piece of paper. However, his will was very tenacious and he refused to give up. The 2 halves of the body emitted a blood-red light and flew together, trying to piece back together to form a complete body. However, how could Ji Tianqing let him do as he wished? Piercing sword. The heaven's barrier sword thrust forward, emitting a dazzling cold light that flashed in the night sky. In the next moment, the cold light pierced through the tribal chief's head and exploded in his head. Boom! With a muffled explosion, a blazing white mushroom cloud bloomed, illuminating the night sky for hundreds of miles. This time, not only was the tribal chief's body blown into powder, even his soul could not escape in time and was instantly killed by the sword light. The tribal chief of the Moonless tribe was killed by Ji Tianqing in 2 moves, just like that. The elder, who was not far away, witnessed this scene with his own eyes. He was shocked and terrified. He was about to use his unique skill to attack Ji Tianqing and save the tribal chief at the same time. Seeing that the tribal chief was killed in an instant, he could not help but be stunned. After coming back to his senses, he turned around and fled without hesitation. He fled to the north without a care for anything else. Ji Tianqing turned into a stream of light and chased after him, using his divine sense to lock onto the elder's divine soul aura. The elder saw that he was relentless in his pursuit and looked like he wouldn't give up until he was dead. He was shocked and angry. In a moment of desperation, the elder exerted all his strength to use the teleportation secret technique and traveled 20 miles in an instant. Ji Tianqing followed closely behind and teleported 20 miles, catching up with him immediately. 7-star sword. With a wave of the burial of heaven's sword, 49 giant swords of golden light instantly engulfed the elder's figure. Pung pung pung. The elder who had nowhere to hide was immediately struck by the sword light that filled the sky and was blasted into pieces. After his physical body was destroyed, his divine soul was also severely injured. He fled to the north in a panic. However, Ji Tianxing caught up with him and waved his palm to release a dazzling 5-colored thunderbolt. Following a few thunderous booms, the elder's divine soul was destroyed on the spot by the thunderbolts and vanished into thin air. After the 5-colored thunderbolts dissipated, the night sky gradually regained its calm. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky and frowned as he looked to the north. He secretly released his divine sense and began to investigate and search. Although he had successfully intercepted the fleeing chief and elder and killed them with thunderous means, he was not happy. However, he wasn't happy at all. His heart was filled with worry. After all, the priest of the Moonless tribe had disappeared. From the chief's tone, the priest had long fled the Moonless tribe and was rushing to Black Sun City. In the demon territory, the most sacred and dignified place was of course the sacred mountain. The ancestor demon god and the 4 demon saints were all gathered there. That was the leader of North Underworld Mountain. Below the sacred mountain, there were more than 20 cities, all of which had demon monarch powerhouses and millions of demons gathered there. Below the cities were the various demon tribes. The Moonless tribe was not far from Black Sun City and was also under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Before entering North Underworld Mountain, Ji Tianxing had studied the map of North Underworld Mountain. The first target they were searching for was the Black Sun Abyss. In recent years there had been many anomalies there, and there might be divine pearls hidden there. Unfortunately, the Black Sun Abyss was north of Black Sun City, about 10,000 miles away. Once the priest escaped to Black Sun City and reported, Black Sun City would definitely send a large number of experts and powerhouses to madly search for and kill Ji Tianxing and the other 2. Ji Tianxing was not afraid of being surrounded by the demons, but in that case, he would no longer be able to hide his whereabouts. After 100 breaths, he used his divine sense to search 1,000 miles, but did not find any trace or aura of the priest. He had reason to believe that the priest had long fled far away. Most likely, after escaping the Moonless tribe, the priest had used some kind of secret technique or magic treasure. After all, when he caught up with the chief and elder, the priest was already gone. Sigh. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and turned to fly back to the Moonless tribe. After a while, he returned to the Moonless tribe. Overlooking the valley from the night sky, he saw the entire tribe. At this time, the Moonless tribe had long become a sea of fire and ruins, completely destroyed. The destructive dragon breath burned the valley into scorched earth, and the surrounding mountains also melted into magma, continuously flowing into the valley. The aftermath of the great battle destroyed all the houses and buildings into dregs and powder. 90% of the 100,000 demon civilians were also massacred. The ground was littered with broken bones, dark purple bloodstains, and broken pieces of weapons. The tens of thousands of surviving demon civilians were completely scared out of their wits. No matter how devout their faith was, or how crazy their fighting spirit was, it all disappeared at this time. In front of the hellish scene and massacre, nothing was important except for survival. The tens of thousands of demon civilians collapsed, roaring and screaming in fear and despair, desperately fleeing in all directions. However, Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the 2 divine dragons each guarded a direction, surrounding the entire valley. The demons who fled in all directions could not escape alive. After a quarter of an hour, the battle finally ended. All the demons had been killed. The world quieted down, leaving only the sound of rolling magma and the rising flames. Ji Tianxing returned to the top of the ruins, and Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the 2 divine dragons all surrounded him. Yun Yao looked at him with concern and asked, "Tianxing, have you dealt with the 3 guys who escaped?" Although Luo Li did not speak, she also looked at him with a serious gaze. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a serious expression, I only caught up with the chief and the elders and killed them. However, the priest is nowhere to be seen. According to the chief, the priest fled to Black Sun City in the north to inform them. Yun Yao suddenly frowned, showing a touch of worry. This is bad. That tribe's priest is a tribulation stage powerhouse. He can definitely escape to Black Sun City. Our whereabouts will be exposed, and we will soon be hunted down by a large number of demon powerhouses. Chapter 2023. Luo Li's words silenced Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Black Sun City was near the Black Sun Abyss, but they had to go there to search for the God Orb. Everyone knew that. Their whereabouts had definitely been exposed this time. With the demon race's style, they would never let them go. They would chase them to the end and never give up. The atmosphere was a little dull and a little awkward. The three of them were silent. After a long time, Ji Tianxing said, "We can't stay here for long. We should go." Then, he rode the black dragon and flew north. Yun Yao saw Luo Li's strange expression and seemed to blame herself, so she comforted her. "Luo Li, don't think too much. We won't blame you. Before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, we had already considered this problem and made preparations." Luo Li nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "It's useless to say anything now. Yao Yao, you don't have to comfort me. I know what to do. This happened because of me, so I will take responsibility. No matter what dangers we encounter in the future, I will try to resolve them. I will follow the Divine Master's orders to help you search for the God Orb and protect you to leave the North Underworld Mountain safely." Then, she stopped talking and rode the glass fire dragon to the north. 40,000 miles away from the Moonless tribe, there was a grayish-brown wasteland. The flat and vast wasteland was thousands of miles wide, and the ground was covered with gravel and weeds. It was covered by black clouds and thick fog all year round. The light was dim and filled with the cold aura of death. Even the ferocious demon beasts didn't dare to approach this area, let alone enter the wasteland. In the depths of the wasteland, there was an ancient city that covered an area of 100 miles. The ancient city made of black stone was circular, like a black sun, buckled on the wasteland. The city walls were 30 meters high, made of huge black stone, and inlaid with large iron chains that were as thick as the mouth of a bowl, tightly connected. Inside the city were rows upon rows of houses, like fortresses, like inverted black bowls. The architectural style of the ancient city retained the most ancient characteristics of the demon race, mysterious and gloomy. The devils walking on the streets were all dressed in loose black robes. Their bodies were filled with black qi, as if they were ghosts walking in the dark night. This was despite the fact that there were nearly 1 million demons living in the city. However, there were very few people walking in the streets and alleys. The entire ancient city was not bustling with activity. It was exceptionally quiet and strange. At this moment it was late at night. A dark red blood moon hung diagonally in the night sky, obscured by dark clouds and thick fog, appearing and disappearing from time to time. In the depths of the ancient city, in the most solemn palace. In the spacious meeting hall, the gems on the walls shone with a dark red light. Sitting on the throne at the head of the table was a white-haired middle-aged man in a purple robe. This person's skin was dark purple, his eyes were scarlet red like flames, and his facial features were sharp as if they were carved by a blade. His entire body emitted dense killing intent and domineering aura. He was the city lord of Black Sun City, Shuiyu. At the same time, he was one of the 36 demon monarchs of the demon race, ranked 9th, Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost had ruled Black Sun City for hundreds of years. He controlled a city, over 50 tribes, and nearly 10 million demons. He was one of the top nobles of the demon race, and had the qualifications to meet the 4 demon saints. On the left side of the meeting hall sat a purple-robed elder of the demon race. This person's face was old, and his body was somewhat stooped. He held a 5-foot-long ghost head staff in his hand. Under the disheveled white hair was a face that was as withered as an old tree. He looked like he had one foot in the grave and was getting old. However, his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's, and occasionally flashed with a malicious light that made people shudder. From this, it could be seen that this purple-robed elder was not an ordinary person. Even Demon Monarch Blood Ghost maintained a respectful attitude towards him, not daring to slight him. This purple-robed elder was also one of the 36 demon monarchs, ranked 4th, Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow. In the hall paved with black stone, a gray-robed elder stood respectfully. This person's appearance was somewhat wretched. His gray robe was stained with blood, and his white hair was disheveled. Even so, he still held a Demon Dao Codex and a snake-headed walking stick in his hand. If Ji Tianqing was here, he would definitely recognize this person as the priest of the Moonless tribe. The priest lowered his head and bowed to Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. He said in a respectful tone, "This subordinate is the high priest of the Moonless tribe. Greetings to the honorable city lord." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He asked in a low voice, "Priest Moonless, you came here injured in the middle of the night, saying that you have an urgent military report. What the hell happened? Did the Moonless tribe encounter some difficulties?" Priest Moonless shook his head, his face filled with grief and indignation. He said in an indignant tone, "City Lord, what our tribe encountered is not a difficulty, but a disaster." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost was startled and frowned. Even Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow, who was sitting on the left, narrowed his eyes and looked at Priest Moonless with a sharp gaze. An invisible pressure enveloped Priest Moonless. He was in awe and hurriedly explained, reporting to City Lord, "This is what happened. Today, our tribe was holding a sacrificial ceremony, and hundreds of thousands of people were praying under the altar. Who knew that a strong human enemy would suddenly invade, break into the altar, and blaspheme the glory of our ancestors?" Priest Moonless explained everything that had happened in detail. Of course, he also cleverly explained that he, the chief, and the elders had run away at the last minute. He was not afraid of death, nor was he running away at the last minute. He shouldered a heavy responsibility and came to Black Sun City to report. After hearing the story, Demon Monarch Blood Ghost's face darkened. His brows furrowed and his eyes flashed with killing intent. "Priest Moonless, are you sure those 3 invaders were humans? A young man and 2 young women? They really massacred the Moonless tribe?" Priest Moonless hurriedly nodded and said in an indignant tone, "Yes, this subordinate saw it clearly. Those 3 were very strong, and they had 2 divine dragons with them. When this subordinate left the tribe, tens of thousands of people had been killed by them. By now, the entire tribe has probably been destroyed, and all the people have been massacred. Those 3 human bastards did not even spare the old, weak, women, and children of our tribe. They are simply heartless and cruel to the extreme." Ghost Blood Demon Monarch clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. His killing intent grew even thicker. "Priest Moonless, do you still remember what those 3 people looked like?" "Of course I do." Priest Moonless was already prepared. He hurriedly waved his hand and a white light floated in the air. The white light formed a light screen and several images appeared on it. They were the portraits of Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Luo Li, and the 2 divine dragons. The images were very clear and very lifelike. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost looked over and fixed his gaze on Ji Tianqing's portrait, and his eyes widened. Chapter 2024. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch and Elder Moonless were stunned by Devil Monarch Blood's words. Both of them frowned as they stared at Ji Tianqing's portrait. Elder Moonless subconsciously asked, "City Lord, could it be that you've seen this demon before?" Devil King Blood did not answer. Instead, he stared at Ji Tianqing's portrait and asked Ghost Shadow Demon King, "Ghost Shadow, do you recognize him?" Ghost Shadow Demon King was also suspicious. He was not sure at first, but after being reminded, he said in a cold voice, "Old Nine, you mean he is Ji Tianqing?" Devil King Blood nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "That's right. He is the #1 enemy of my tribe, the human genius that our ancestor has requested to kill many times, Ji Tianxing. In these few years I have seen this person's portrait many times, and I have a deep impression of him. Although this monarch has never seen him before, this monarch definitely won't be mistaken about his portrait." After saying that, a light flashed in his palm and a scroll appeared. He shook his hand and the scroll opened, revealing a portrait. The person in the portrait was a white-robed, black-haired youth. It was Ji Tianxing without a doubt. Ghost Shadow Demon King and Elder Moonless looked at the scroll in Devil King Blood's hand, and then looked at Ji Tianxing's portrait on the screen. They no longer had any doubts. It really is him. Elder Moonless was emotional. He said with grief and indignation, "No wonder this person is so strong, and his methods are so cruel. Master Castellan, please avenge our Moonless tribe." Devil King Blood glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "Ji Tianxing is the #1 enemy of my tribe. Our ancestor has ordered him to be killed. Even if you did not beg, I would not have let him go." Elder Moonless was relieved. He thanked Devil King Blood gratefully and said no more. The ghostly shadow demon monarch frowned and pondered for a moment. With a serious expression, he said, "Ji Tianxing dared to intrude into our territory and even massacred the Moonless tribe. We must cut him into pieces to vent our anger. However, Old Nine, you should have heard that ancestor Shui Pao once went to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to kill Ji Tianxing. The old ancestor returned in defeat, his physical body destroyed, leaving only his divine soul to recuperate in the sacred mountain." Demon Lord Blood Demon Lord nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "How could I not know? Not only Patriarch Shui Pao, but the newly promoted demon Saint Shura was also killed by Ji Tianxing not long ago. Fortunately, Lord Azura had mastered a secret technique. After his body was destroyed, he could still use the heavenly demon Jade Seed technique to be reborn. 2 great devil saints have fallen in the hands of Ji Tianxing. This shows how strong and powerful he is." "That's right." Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch nodded and said in a serious tone, "Even if you and I want to kill the enemy, we don't have the corresponding strength. We can't be reckless." Devil Monarch Blood's lips curled into a cold smile as he said in a playful tone, "With our strength, we naturally can't kill Ji Tianxing, nor can we obtain such a huge contribution. However, we only need to report the news and track Ji Tianxing's location. Naturally, there will be stronger great devil saints who will take his lowly life." Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch raised his eyebrows and immediately understood what he meant. He nodded with a cold smile on his face. In the wee hours of the morning, the night was not over, but the light was about to come. The sky was still covered with gray clouds, and the cold wind was howling. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li were riding 2 divine dragons and flying in the sky. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the 3 of them avoided Black Sun City. At this time, the 3 of them had arrived near the Black Sun Abyss. 100 miles in front of them was a huge pitch-black abyss. It was a ravine that ran from west to east, thousands of miles long and 200 miles wide. The ravine was bottomless, and it was shrouded in demonic fog all year round, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Looking down from the sky, this huge ravine looked like a terrifying sword mark left behind by a god who had slashed the mountains and rivers. It also looked like a huge crack that had split the earth. The 2 divine dragons sped up and flew toward the Black Sun Abyss. Luo Li stood on the dragon's back and spoke to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao via divine sense. "The Black Sun Abyss is right in front of us. Over the past few years, there have been many heavenly anomalies here. The demon race experts were also alarmed and searched many times, but they didn't find any clues. However, in the abyss, they found a large number of powerful demonic beasts, as well as some ancient ruins and remnant souls. According to my guess, The abyss may have been the cave abode of a demon race expert thousands of years ago. Due to some reason, the cave abode collapsed, causing the earth to collapse, and this abyss appeared. The ancient ruins and powerful demonic aura attracted hundreds of demonic beasts and caused many anomalies. However, in recent years, the demon race experts have frequently explored this place and searched it countless times. No one can be sure if the divine orb is hidden here, so don't get your hopes up. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "Even if there's only a sliver of hope, we won't give up. How can we know if it's real without trying?" Luoli nodded slightly and said, "Our whereabouts have been exposed, and we are in a very dangerous situation. We must move quickly. The sooner we finish exploring the Black Sun Abyss, the sooner we leave this place." Soon, the two divine dragons entered the abyss shrouded in black fog. The vast abyss was completely filled with black fog and demonic aura. There was almost no light, and they couldn't see the surroundings. Everyone used their consciousness to cover hundreds of miles and carefully searched. The walls on both sides of the cliff were so steep that they were almost straight. Not a single blade of grass grew on the cold gray walls, but many black mushrooms and moss grew on them. To the demon race, these things were excellent tonics and medicinal ingredients. To other races, they were evil and poisonous. The three of them were ambushed before they reached the bottom of the abyss. Suddenly, a few pairs of giant scarlet eyes appeared in the surrounding black fog, emitting a bloodthirsty light. Roar! Caw! Several low, vigorous, and ear-piercing beast roars quickly approached from all directions. In the next moment, 4 gigantic demonic beasts with violent auras rushed out of the black fog. The one in the east was a blood-winged demonic leopard that was more than 300 meters long. It was blood-red in color and had 2 pairs of wide blood wings. The one in the west was a black crow that was more than 300 meters wide. It had 3 heads and was surrounded by evil demonic aura. The demonic beasts that rushed out from the south and north were a 5-colored python that was more than 300 meters long and a demonic wolf that was as large as a mountain. The python had 2 heads that spat out a 5-colored poisonous fog. The demonic wolf's 4 hooves burned with ice-blue soul fire, and its entire body emitted an extremely cold aura. Its ice-blue eyes had double pupils. These bloodthirsty demonic beasts weren't like the experts of the demon race, who could speak a few simple words. Chapter 2025. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 had long expected the appearance of the 4 demonic beasts. They even knew that there were far more demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss. It was because of this that this place became a forbidden area. Martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm did not dare to enter, or they would die. After all, the demonic beasts that could occupy this place were all at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The 4 demonic beasts before them were no exception. The weakest was at the 2nd tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The strongest, the blood-winged demonic leopard, was at the 4th tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 demonic beasts and the 2 demonic beasts launched a counterattack without hesitation. Both sides were determined to kill each other. They used powerful secret techniques and fought in the abyss until the sky darkened and the earth darkened, splashing brilliance everywhere. The colorful radiance of dermic powers clashed fiercely, bursting out wave after wave of shock waves that rippled outwards. Loud rumbling sounds reverberated in the abyss. The earth was shaking, and the steep rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. This battle lasted for only 20 breaths of time before it quickly ended. There was no doubt about the fate of the 4 demonic beasts. They were blasted into smithereens. Even their souls were devoured by the sword of burial of heaven. To the 4 demonic beasts this was a tragedy and disaster. To the many demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss, this was a sign of impending danger. But to Ji Tianqing and the other 2, this was just a small interlude, not worth mentioning. The 3 rode the demonic beasts and continued flying downward. Not long after, the three landed at the bottom of the abyss. The bottom of the abyss was 200 miles below the ground. The ground was made of hard black rock, full of ravines and cracks. However, the bottom of the abyss was filled with water, at least 100 feet deep. The black water was as still as death, without any ripples. It covered many cracks, boulders, and broken walls. Ji Tianqing and the other two explored from west to east, releasing their divine senses into the water to investigate the situation underground. Within 15 minutes, the three found many traces. There were many corpses of demonic beasts, as well as tattered dermic treasures and weapon fragments. There were also many broken walls submerged in the black water. It was obvious that the situation was as Luoli had guessed. There used to be grand palaces and buildings here. They were most likely the cave abodes of demon race expert. Unfortunately, no matter how grand the palaces were, they were all in ruins, submerged in the long river of history. Only a few wide and thick dilapidated walls were left, still telling the story of the past glory. The three had they searched 100 miles away when they encountered trouble. It was still an attack of magical beasts, but there were as many as 9 of them. The 9 demonic beasts of heaven were overlords of tribulation, transcendence. They were the demonic beasts, demonic transcendence, were they transcendence. The demonic beasts. Beasts, demonic transcendence, transcended transcendence, transcending transcendence be. Soon, another earth-shattering battle began in the abyss. Hundreds of ferocious demonic beasts besieged Ji Tianqing's group and the 2 divine dragons, unleashing devastating attacks. The 3 of them also fought back with all their might, using powerful secret techniques to quickly slaughter those demonic beasts. Both sides fought fiercely. Rumbling sounds could be heard, and terrifying shockwaves could be heard. At the bottom of the abyss, deep pits and cracks were blasted open one after another. The rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also shattered. Countless rocks collapsed and smashed into the black water at the bottom of the abyss. The earth was trembling violently, shocking the area within 1,000 miles. The dazzling radiance of the spell penetrated the darkness of the abyss and was reflected in the night sky like a colorful rainbow. This battle lasted for a quarter of an hour, and 200 miles of the abyss was completely destroyed. Hundreds of demonic beasts suffered heavy casualties. More than 90 of them were killed, and only a few demonic beasts managed to escape. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 did not chase after them to avoid wasting time. Anyway, after this battle, the magical beasts in the abyss were scared out of their wit. The strongest tribulation transcendence demonic beasts were basically all killed, and the remaining small fries were not a threat. In the next hour, no more demonic beasts attacked them. They all hid far away. In this hour, the 3 of them searched hundreds of miles. They found many broken artifacts and weapon fragments, ancient demonic inscriptions, and palace ruins. But these things were not what they were looking for. There was still no clue about the divine pearl they desperately wanted. The 3 of them were unwilling to give up and continued to search in the abyss. After a full 8 hours, the 3 of them reached the eastern end of the abyss. Everyone's eyes were filled with disappointment. Luoli was still unwilling. She turned to Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, you still can't sense the divine pearl's aura?" Yun Yao shook her head and said calmly, "No. Maybe the divine pearl isn't here at all." Ji Tianqing believed in her judgment and comforted her, "Yao Yao, don't worry. We weren't sure where the divine pearl was hidden in the first place. We came to the Black Sun abyss with the mentality of trying our luck. If it's not here, we can just find another place." Before he could finish, the abyss above his head suddenly lit up with a dazzling bloody light. Swoosh! That dark red blood light poured down from the top of the abyss like a flood. In the blink of an eye, the blood light formed a huge barrier that covered a radius of 200 miles. A violent and fierce aura as heavy as a mountain was released from the blood light barrier, fiercely suppressing Ji Tianqing and the other 2. The 3 of them immediately changed their expressions. a cold light surging in their eyes. Damn it, the demons found us and have already chased us here. Ji Tianxing frowned, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Luo Li also frowned, a murderous intent flashing in her clear eyes. No matter, since they came to die, I'll make sure they don't return. With that, the three of them rode the two divine dragons and flew above the abyss. Swoosh, swoosh. 10 breaths later, the three of them flew out of the black sun abyss and arrived above it. It was already afternoon. The golden setting sun shone through the clouds in the sky, sprinkling golden halos. On the cliffs on both sides of the black sun abyss, hundreds of demon experts stood in the surrounding sky. There were more than 400 of them, all of them at the essence spirit realm, the elites of the demon race. They were working together to cast a spell to increase the power of the bloodlight array that covered a radius of 200 miles. In the sky not far from Ji Tianxing and the other two stood a dozen demon generals, all of them tribulation transcendence realm experts. Their leader was dressed in a purple robe, with a head full of white hair. His facial features were as sharp as a knife, and he exuded a dignified aura. Standing beside him was a wizened old man in a purple robe, leaning on a ghost head staff. Chapter 2026. Behind the ghost shadow demon monarch and the ancient blood demon monarch stood 12 tribulation passing experts. These people were the generals of Black Sun City and the powerhouses of the surrounding tribes. Ji Tianxing glanced over and saw that Elder Wuyue was among the crowd. His pupils shrank, and a glint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The Moonless Tribe's elder really fled to Black Sun City to report. It seems that this group of demons must be the powerhouses of Black Sun City, he said in a low voice. Luo Li nodded in agreement and said coldly, the surrounding dozens of tribes are under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Black Sun City is very close to here. After receiving Elder Moonless' report, they will be able to mobilize a large number of powerhouses to hunt us down in the shortest time possible. Yun Yao was a little worried and said in a low voice, it was already very difficult for us to fight hundreds of demonic beasts, and we consumed a lot of our magic power. Now, the dozen or so tribulation stage powerhouses of Black Sun City have brought more than 400 primordial soul stage powerhouses. No matter how strong we are outnumbered and can't defeat so many powerhouses. What's more, the other side has the geographical advantage and set up an ambush in advance. Luo Li coldly snorted and said with disdain, back in the Moonless Tribe, we killed 100,000 demon clansmen. What are these mere 400 demon clansmen? As a martial saint, I can block 1,000,000 troops with one sword. What is there to fear? You don't have to worry, I will protect you well. These words were not arrogant, but the confidence of a martial saint powerhouse. Blocking 1,000,000 troops with one sword was not Luo Li boasting, but a fair evaluation of a martial saint powerhouse in the martial world. Of course, the so-called million soldiers were only elite soldiers. They were definitely not transcendent martial artists above the spirit refinement realm. At this moment, Dark Blood Demon King, who was the leader, opened his mouth. He looked at Ji Tianxing proudly and said in a majestic tone, Ji Tianxing, I heard that you are the #1 genius of the human race, and also the mortal enemy of our race. You have all kinds of divine abilities. But today I see that you are just SOSO. You have fallen into my hands. You wouldn't have thought of that, would you? This sovereign has grasped an ancient fiend Tao divine ability. Even from tens of thousands of miles away, I can still search for your whereabouts. Ji Tianxing was very familiar with the various magical abilities of the demonic Tao. The other party had Elder Wuyue's information and used some demonic arts, so it wasn't strange for them to find him. He looked expressionlessly at Devil Monarch Blood. If I'm not wrong, you should be the city lord of Black Sun City. With the strength of the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he should be one of the 36 demon monarchs. Demon Lord Blood immediately revealed a proud look and sneered, That's right. I am the 9th Devil Monarch, Shuiyu. After that, he pointed at the ghost shadow devil monarch beside him and said arrogantly, "This one beside me is the fourth devil monarch, ghost shadow. Ji Tianxing, this sovereign and the ghostly shadow devil monarch have joined hands and mobilized more than 450 elite experts to set up the heavenly devil god-slaying array here, just to kill you on the spot. You're a smart person. You should know that you're going to die today." Demon Lord Blood's powerful voice rang out in the air above the abyss, spreading for a radius of 200 miles. Hearing this, all the demons sneered complacently. Ji Tianxing didn't care and sneered disdainfully. "You're just a mere demon monarch. Even if you have more than 400 lackeys, you're still a clown. Where did you get the courage to be so arrogant? Even your Shui Pao ancestor and Azura demon saint will die under my sword. Who do you think you are?" Such arrogant words made Demon Lord Blood so angry that his face turned black, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch, who had been silent, finally stepped forward and spoke. His turbid old eyes revealed a sinister light as he sneered. "The two demon saints were careless and fell into the trap of a despicable person like you. Now, we've set up the heavenly devil god-slaying array to kill you. Let's see how you're going to escape." With more than 400 nascent soul realm experts controlling the array, it's enough to kill 99% of the martial saints. No matter how capable you are, you will still be crushed to pieces today, dying without a burial ground. You can spout as much nonsense as you want. In any case, these are your last words. Seeing this, Yun Yao frowned slightly. Suddenly understanding something, she hastily sent a sound transmission to Ji Tianxing. "Tianxing, the demon race has always been sinister and crafty. These people are just stalling for time." Luoli also heard her sound transmission and said, "That's right. They have the advantage, but they're not in a rush to attack. They truly are afraid of our strength, and are trying to stall for time. However, Yao Yao, don't be in such a rush. If they're stalling for time, isn't your husband also stalling for time?" Yun Yao raised an eyebrow and looked at Ji Tianxing in puzzlement. Ji Tianxing was still arguing with the two devil sovereigns. He secretly sent her an explanation. Shui Yu and Guiying, the two devil sovereigns, have brought many experts to surround them, but they aren't confident in succeeding. They definitely have a backup plan. They're just trying to stall for time and wait for the demon saint experts to come. That's why we can't fight them. We have to end this quickly and leave this place." Yun Yao immediately understood what he meant. She hastily asked, "Tianxing, what method do you have?" Ji Tianxing said, "I've already performed the God-Eye mystic art to see through this heavenly devil god-slaying formation. This is a top-tier tribulation-level formation with extraordinary power. However, I've already found 3 weak points in the formation. I've secretly controlled the energy of heaven and earth to accumulate enough energy. Once the battle starts, I'll break the formation and bring everyone out." "So that's how it is." Yun Yao immediately understood and said without the slightest hesitation, "Tianxing, don't worry. We'll cover you." Just as she said that, Shui Yu and Ghost Shadow were infuriated by Ji Tianxing. They could no longer suppress their killing intent. Demon Monarch Shui Yu immediately gave the order and roared, "Ji Tianxing, you arrogant bastard! This monarch will kill you right now and grind your bones to dust. Activate the formation with all your strength and kill him for me." Upon hearing his command, more than 400 primordial soul realm experts activated the formation with all their might and released powerful attack. The huge blood-red barrier immediately released black fog, blood-red light and soul fire. They formed 100,000 blades of light and blood-red fire that rained down on Ji Tianxing and the other two. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the area above the abyss became a world of blood-red light and blue fire. The destructive power poured down, making it impossible for Ji Tianxing and the other two demon monarchs and the two demon monarchs to dodge. The two demon monarchs roared angrily and used their huge bodies to protect everyone. At the same time, they spat out dragon breath at the blood-red light and soul fire that filled the sky. Ji Tianxing, break the formation quickly. I'll cover you. Chapter 2027. Boom, 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 boom. Intense collisions sounded in the sky above the abyss. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, Luoli, the Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon were all fighting with all their might to resist the power of the demon god-slaying array. Colorful dermic powers collided fiercely and created a sky full of debris. It was like a fire that shot into the sky and lit up the surrounding hundreds of miles. Violent and devastating shock waves violently burst forth, causing the surrounding abysses to collapse under the impact. The earth shook violently, and the cliffs on both sides of the abyss also cracked continuously. An endless amount of gravel and soil fell to the bottom of the abyss, making muffled rumbling noises. The area immediately became chaotic. Luoli did as she said. She led the charge and resisted the power of the array with all her might, trying her best to protect Yun Yao. The two divine dragons also fought back with all their might and used all kinds of Dragon Clan secret technique. However, everyone could only resist the power of the array. The effect of the counterattack was very weak. It was absolutely impossible to break the formation. This was what Ji Tianxing had expected. Therefore, when the battle started, he cast spells to resist the power of the array and to break the array at the same time. He quietly approached the southwest corner and secretly controlled the power of heaven and earth. He released a powerful force that could penetrate everything and attacked the blood-light barrier. Boom! Crack! Following a thunderous boom, a shallow crack appeared on the blood-red light barrier, and it began to tremble violently. About 100 feet away from the crack, there were two Essence Soul Realm experts who were focused on casting spells. They did not expect that the formation would suddenly be attacked and cracks would appear. The powerful impact forced the two of them back 10 steps. Their faces were as pale as paper. The two of them widened their eyes in shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. After regaining their senses, the two of them hurriedly flew back to their original positions and cast spells with all their might to repair the long crack. In the southwest corner, there were 3 formation nodes and over 100 formation veins in the bloody light barrier, which was about 30 meters wide. Ordinary people might not be able to see the clues, but Ji Tianxing could see that this was one of the 3 weak points of the formation. He wanted to use this as a breakthrough point to blast open the heavenly demon god-slaying formation and lead everyone out of the encirclement. Piercing sword! Ji Tianxing coldly shouted. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he unleashed his full power and fiercely stabbed out. Swish! A speck of cold light suddenly appeared, as if it had disappeared. In the next instant, the cold light pierced through the crack in the blood-light barrier and exploded. Boom! A dazzling cold light suddenly blossomed in the crack, like a mushroom cloud. The crack, which was more than 3 zhang long, suddenly expanded several times. It was torn to 10 zhang long, which was the width of a palm. Unfortunately, the blood-light barrier was not completely broken. There was still a thin layer of blood-light in the cracks. Ji Tianxing saw the hope of escaping. His spirits were lifted. He once again waved the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed at the crack. However, the 2 devil monarchs and the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, who were standing above the abyss, had already noticed the clues. Everyone's primary target was him, so their attention was always on him. When he blasted a crack in the blood-light barrier, the 2 devil monarchs were already furious and sent people to stop him. At this moment, he was about to stab the crack with his sword. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage had already entered the array and pounced on him with murderous intent. Thief, don't even think about escaping. Lowly human reptile, don't even think about destroying the array. Ji Tianxing, today you will die without a doubt. There will be no escape. Thief, give me your life. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, including Elder Wuyue, all held their weapons and magic treasures. They desperately performed their secret methods and besieged Ji Tianqing. The mountain-like evil demon's shadow, the overwhelming blood-red light, the ice-blue soul fire, and all kinds of black light and sharp blades, as well as the highly toxic black fog, poured down in torrents. The area within a radius of 10 miles was covered. Ji Tianqing was in danger, and could only turn around to face the enemies. He used the heavenly dragon's 7 steps and his body turned into a white light phantom. He flashed in the blood light all over the sky and dodged all kinds of attack. At the same time, he waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and slashed out sword light all over the sky. 7 stars sword. 49 huge golden swords, all of which were more than 300 zhang long, were very powerful. Boom, 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 boom. With a series of dull noises, the 49 sword lights defeated all kinds of secret attacks. Although he successfully resolved the first round of attacks from the 12 powerhouses. However, the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage were very brave and immediately launched a second round of fierce attack. Monstrous demonic light. Floating blood sea. Grand sun black soul sword. Attacking life and seizing soul. Everyone was full of killing intent. They roared with ferocious faces and used their trump cards to besiege Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing couldn't get away, nor could he continue to break the array. He could only concentrate on resisting and fighting back. In just 10 breaths, the two sides had exchanged more than a dozen moves in the array. Ji Tianqing was hit several times by the swords and was hit by the devil chi and the bloodlight blades more than a dozen times. However, his physical defense was comparable to that of a martial sage. The attacks of these powerhouses in the tribulation stage couldn't hurt him at all. However, the secret methods he used with all his strength destroyed the bodies of 3 powerhouses in the tribulation stage and injured 5 of them. Elder Wuyue was the devil he hated the most. Of course, he had the worst ending. Not only was his body smashed into powder, but his divine soul was also seriously injured. He turned into a ball of dark purple light and floated in the sky above the abyss. It was a pity that these Devil Clan powerhouses were not afraid of death. They had been blinded by anger and killing intent. They didn't know fear at all and didn't retreat at all. They continued to besiege Ji Tianqing without caring about anything. Even if they died on the spot, they still wanted to bite off a piece of meat from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing felt a headache coming on. He only wanted to kill these Devil Clan powerhouses as soon as possible and continue to break the array. After all, the process of breaking the array couldn't be stopped halfway. Otherwise, the crack would be repaired, and it would heal soon. Unfortunately, these Devil Clan powerhouses were in the heavenly Devil God-slaying array, and their strength was greatly enhanced. In a short time, it would be difficult for Ji Tianqing to kill them. Just as Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anxiety, a cold and clear voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Ji Tianqing, break the array quickly. I'm coming to help you. It was Luo Li's voice. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw Luo Li's body glowing with an icy blue brilliance. It was as if she was burning with flames as she rushed over like a stream of light. She held an ice crystal short sword in each hand and rushed toward the few Devil Clan powerhouses as fast as lightning. In an instant, she attacked 3 times, leaving behind 3 illusions. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Devil Clan powerhouses who were surrounded by the icy blue illusions froze on the spot and stopped moving. Their bodies ignited with icy blue flames and quickly turned into ashes, scattering in the sky. Chapter 2028. Luo Li was indeed a martial saint. She killed 3 Demon Clan powerhouses in an instant. The 3 Tribulation Realm powerhouses didn't even manage to see how Luo Li had acted even when they died. Seeing this scene, the other Demon Clan powerhouses were overwhelmed with shock and fear towards Luo Li. Everyone quietly took a few steps back and changed their formation to attack Luo Li together. Luo Li was fearless. She waved the ice crystal short sword with both hands and flashed through the crowd, killing one powerhouse after another. The The pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced. He ignored the demon clan powerhouses and focused on breaking the array. In the southwest corner, the crack on the blood light barrier was more than half repaired. There was only a 2-foot-long crack left. Furthermore, the blood demon monarch saw through it and gathered more than 20 essence soul stage powerhouses to repair this area. At most, the crack would be repaired in 10 breaths of time. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's face darkened. His eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the Heaven Barrier sword with both hands and slashed out a huge golden sword with all his strength, ruthlessly slashing at the crack. Kaboom! A deafening explosion sounded and the blood light barrier trembled violently. That shallow scar, which was more than 20 feet long, expanded to more than 80 feet long and about half a finger deep. The 20 Essence Soul Stage powerhouses were also hit by the huge impact. They all retreated 100 feet and were panting with pale faces. Ji Tianqing did not give them any time to breathe. He immediately raised his left palm and released a sacred golden flame. God-slaying spear! Whoosh! The sacred golden flames immediately transformed into a 3-meter-long divine spear. With a godly might that could pierce through all things, the spear viciously stabbed toward the crack. Kaboom! A thunderous boom resounded through the clouds and shook the heavens and the earth. The spear pierced the blood light barrier and blasted a big hole in it. Dense cracks appeared on both sides of the hole, and the crack was completely torn apart. Along with a wave of crisp cracking sounds, the cracks exploded into pieces with a bang, and countless pieces of bloody light sprayed out. An 80-zhang-long gap suddenly appeared. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. More than 20 immortal soul stage cultivators were sent tumbling in all directions by the impact of the impact. Everyone was covered in blood and wounds. Half of them had even fainted. The cliffs on both sides of the abyss also suffered from the destructive impact and completely collapsed. Inexhaustible rocks and soil poured into the abyss like a flood. For a time, the scene was extremely chaotic. Ji Tianqing made a prompt decision and rushed out of the gap. With a flash of his figure, he escaped from the ceiling formation. Not far away, Yun Yao and the 2 mystical dragons were rushing over with all their might. Luoli was not in a hurry to retreat. While protecting Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons, she did not forget to kill the 2 powerhouses in the tribulation stage. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 streaks of light flashed past consecutively. Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons passed through the gap and escaped from the heavenly devil god-slaying formation. Ji Tianqing rushed to the front, swinging his sword and killing more than 20 immortal divinity experts, like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. Swing your sword. Broken Moon Sword. Broken Sun Sword. The ultimate sword techniques of the 9 swords of the Burial of Heaven were displayed one by one, and golden sword shadows covered the sky and earth. Those more than 20 immortal divinity experts were already severely injured. How could they resist his attacks? In a short while, more than 10 immortal divinity experts died under Ji Tianqing's sword. Not only was his physical body slashed to pieces, even his divine soul was shattered. The remaining few severely injured immortal divinity experts saw that the situation was not good and fled in advance. The obstacles outside the formation were swept away. There were no more obstacles in front of them. Ji Tianqing hurriedly brought Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons and flew towards the north of the abyss. However, just as he flew 1,000 feet away, 2 streaks of bright red light flashed in front of him and blocked his way. He took a closer look and saw that it was the Ghost Shadow Demon Lord and the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Behind the 2 of them, there were more than 40 immortal divinity experts. All of them were rushing over with murderous intent. The hundreds of immortal soul stage elders around the blood light barrier also surged forward under the command of the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Since Ji Tianqing and the rest had already escaped from the formation, there was no point in them continuing to control the formation. Therefore, they rushed over to surround and intercept Ji Tianqing and the rest. Ji Tianqing, you have indeed impressed me. You actually managed to break the demon god-slaying formation. However, I have already said that you will definitely die today. I will not let you escape. The ancient blood demon lord stared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and shouted in a cold voice. As he finished speaking, he held a 5-feet-long blood-red sword in his hands and charged towards Ji Tianqing. The ancient blood demon lord also changed his old appearance. He waved his ghost-head staff and released hundreds of evil spirits that pounced towards Ji Tianqing. The immortal divinity experts in all directions also lined up in battle formations. They worked together to release sharp blood-red blades that flooded the area within a 10-mile radius. Another fierce battle broke out in an instant. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven and fought against 2 demon lords alone. He used all kinds of secret techniques and had the upper hand. The 2 demon lords were not his match even when they joined forces. They were forced to retreat and were constantly injured. Fortunately, there were hundreds of immortal divinity experts surrounding Ji Tianqing and restraining him. They were always able to help the 2 demon lords out. If not, the 2 demon lords would have ended up in an even more tragic state. Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons were surrounded by hundreds of immortal divinity experts and were in a very dangerous situation. They were exhausted from defending against the attacks and could only retreat continuously. There was no way for them to counterattack. This was especially so for the 2 mystical dragons. In order to protect Yun Yao's safety, they were covered in injuries. Fortunately, Luo Li arrived in time. She used a secret technique to protect herself and formed a dark yellow shield to protect Yun Yao. At the same time, she released a destructive sword blade storm. 100,000 ice crystal blades formed a hurricane and started a massacre in the sky. Once those immortal divinity experts were swept up by the sword blade storm, they would be smashed to pieces and their souls destroyed. Everyone fought as they fled. They kept moving the battlefield away from the Black Sun Abyss. After 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Luo Li's methods were the most terrifying, and she killed the most people. She alone had killed more than 200 immortal divinity stage experts. In addition to the 10 tribulation stage experts she had killed earlier, her battle achievements could be said to be outstanding. Moreover, she was completely unscathed. No one could hurt her. Ji Tianqing also killed dozens of immortal divinity experts, and even Evil Blood Demon Lord. Even Evil Blood Demon Lord's arms were cut off and his body was almost destroyed. He was severely injured. As for himself, he only suffered some minor injuries. His white robe was stained with demon blood, and he looked a little miserable. As for Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons, they did not kill many enemies, but they were seriously injured. If not for Luo Li and Ji Tianqing's protection, they would have been in deep trouble. At this point, the demons were almost completely wiped out. Only Evil Blood Demon Lord and more than 30 injured experts were left. Chapter 2029. Spectre Demon Monarch fled back to Black Sun City in a sorry state with a bunch of defeated soldiers. Ji Tianqing, Luo Li, and the others didn't waste time chasing after them. Riding the 2 dragons, they continued to fly north, getting further and further away from Black Sun City. 12 hours later, it was dawn. Everyone stopped to rest and recuperate in a desolate mountain range. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li were fine. They just took out a few pills and quickly recovered their magic power. Yun Yao was only slightly injured. After being treated by Ji Tianqing and taking medicinal pills to recuperate, there was no problem. The 2 dragons were the most seriously injured. They were covered in blood, wounds, and holes. Many dragon scales had fallen off. Fortunately, the dragon clan's recovery ability was strong. After Ji Tianqing and Luo Li's treatment, their injuries quickly stabilized. Everyone hid in the depths of the mountain range and recuperated for an entire day. Until the next morning, when the 2 dragons had recovered 80% of their strength, they continued on their journey. The glazed fire dragon and the black dragon flew side by side, rushing north. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li stood on the back of the dragons, looking ahead calmly and talking through voice transmissions. In the Battle of the Black Sun Abyss, we were attacked by more than 400 experts, but we were able to escape smoothly and kill 90% of the Demon Clan experts. It's incredible! If this matter were to spread, it would cause an uproar on the continent and shock the world. Ji Tianxing said with a calm expression as he glanced at Luo Li. Luo Li looked ahead expressionlessly and said coldly, "I've only heard that the Demon Clan is bloodthirsty and inhumane. After the Demon Clan army invaded the Kingdom of God, I didn't go to the northern border to participate in the battle. Now that I've gone deep into the Demon Clan's hinterland and fought with them personally, I know how hateful and terrifying the Demon Clan is. Such a sinister, cunning, cruel, and bloodthirsty race deserves to be killed." After saying that, she turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing and said indifferently, "As for the shock and discussion of the world, it's just a false reputation. I don't need it." Ji Tianxing looked straight ahead with a playful smile on his face. In the past, he only knew that Luo Li had a noble status, a cold personality, and powerful strength. Now, after so many days of interaction, he finally understood Luo Li better. The three of them were silent, temporarily unable to say anything. Yun Yao broke the silence and said worriedly, "The previous battles were all small skirmishes. The battle in the Black Sun Abyss this time will definitely catch the attention of the Devil Race. Our identities and whereabouts will be completely exposed. From now on, our operations will become more and more dangerous and difficult. We must be even more careful." Ji Tianxing nodded and said solemnly, "There are no divine pearls in the Black Sun Abyss. Our next target is the Ghost Desert, which is millions of miles away. It's one of the few forbidden areas of the Devil Race. It's rumored to be the remains of an ancient battlefield and is extremely dangerous. Not only are there powerful demonic beasts, but there are also demonic experts, ghosts, and demons. Even the environment of the Ghost Desert is very harsh, and there are many hidden formations and traps." Luo Li waved her hand and said indifferently, "Although the Ghost Desert is a forbidden area, it's nothing to us. The only ones who are a threat to us are the 4 great demon saints of the Devil Race. I have a premonition that if the 4th Divine Pearl is really in the North Underworld Mountain, it's very likely to be in the Ghost Desert." Yun Yao frowned and asked in puzzlement, "Luo Li, why are you so sure?" Luo Li thought for a moment and shook her head, "I don't know why. It's just a premonition." Ji Tianxing smiled and said playfully, "I hope your premonition is accurate. If so, we will be able to complete the mission soon. Otherwise, we will have to search for the 3rd target and go deeper into the North Underworld Mountain. The situation will be even more dangerous." A cold light flashed in Luo Li's eyes and she said coldly, "Despicable Devil Race, I will kill them all. No matter how dangerous it is, I will help Yao Yao complete the mission and return to the Kingdom of Gods smoothly." She was absolutely loyal to the Luo Shui martial god. Even if she had to pay with her life, she would complete the mission given by the Luo Shui martial god. Unknowingly, 6 days had passed. In the evening, the 2 divine dragons carried Ji Tianxing and the other 2 to the Ghost Desert. It was a vast desert and it was said that it was hundreds of thousands of miles wide. The desert was surrounded by majestic mountains, and it was like a tall city wall that protected the Ghost Desert. The Ghost Desert was very low and there were no pools of water. It had been dry and barren since ancient times. What was even stranger was that the endless sand in the desert was not golden but dark brown. Looking from afar, the pitch-black desert was filled with a thin layer of black fog, and it looked very mysterious. The closer it was to the night, the colder the temperature in the desert was. The mysterious black fog was getting thicker and thicker, and it formed layers of fog barriers that blocked the view of the desert. After the 2 divine dragons flew into the Ghost Desert, they quickly disappeared into the mysterious black fog. The two of them slowed down and flew deeper into the desert while releasing their divine senses to check the surroundings. Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and Yun Yao were not idle as they released their divine senses to search the desert. The Ghost Desert is too vast and has a radius of at least 500,000 miles. If we were to search like this, we would not miss anything, but it would take us at least half a month. Half a month? That would be enough for the devil race to deploy their troop. I'm afraid that before we find the God Pearl, the 4 great devil sages will bring an army of 100,000 to besiege us. If I am close to the God Pearl, I will be able to sense it. I hope that the heavens will watch over us and let us find the God Pearl soon, the 3 of them discussed as they searched the desert. 4 hours later, trouble came for them. More than 10 ferocious-looking spirits appeared around them and floated silently in the night sky. Those spirits were about 300 meters tall and had green faces and fangs. Their hair was disheveled and they looked terrifying. They did not have legs, but they had 3 heads and 6 arms. Their appearance was so strange that it sent chills down one's spine. More importantly, the strength of those spirits was comparable to a powerhouse in the 5th or 6th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianxing used the God's Eye secret technique and discovered that the spirits were formed by various remnant souls. There were remnant souls of ancient powerhouses, modern adventurers, and devil race powerhouses. There were even remnant souls of powerful devil beasts. All in all, these spirits were very powerful. They would constantly kill living beings and devour their remnant souls to strengthen themselves. Their intelligence was not high, and their aura was very chaotic. However, they did not know pain or fear. They only acted based on their instincts and had an almost immortal body. Ji Tianxing glanced at Luo Li and saw that she was frowning as she observed the spirits. He reminded her, "Spirits are ghosts and are not made of flesh and blood. You cannot use normal spells to deal with them." Chapter 20-30. Although the dozens of ghosts, whose strength was comparable to a powerhouse in the crossing calamity stage, were indeed ferocious and terrifying. However, to Ji Tianxing and the other 2, they were not considered dangerous. They were just a little troublesome. The 3 of them had mastered the soul secret technique. They used the soul secret technique one after another, and quickly defeated the dozens of ghosts. However, the ghosts were extremely tenacious. Even if they were smashed into pieces, they could still be pieced together and continue to fight. Even Luo Li had to expend a lot of effort before she was able to kill the 2 ghosts. As for the remaining ghosts, Ji Tianxing used the divine light of the heaven patching pearl to purify and disperse them. The 3 of them spent more than an hour to solve this problem. Fortunately, no one was injured. The 3 of them rested for a while and continued to search in the Ghost Desert. The next morning, the 3 of them rode on the 2 divine dragons and were searching in the desert. Suddenly, a black and purple streamer flew from the sky and fell into Ji Tianxing's palm. After the streamer disappeared, a jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing lowered his head and looked at the jade slip. He raised his eyebrows subconsciously and was a little confused. Yun Yao also turned her head and looked at him. She could not help but ask, "Tianxing, who sent you the communication jade slip?" Luo Li stared at the communication jade slip. Her face became gloomy and she asked coldly, "That's strange. The communication jade slip in your palm is actually black and purple and contains demon qi? Ji Tianxing, did the demon clan send you a message? Are you in contact with the demon clan?" Seeing that Luo Li was suspicious, Ji Tianxing calmly explained, "It is indeed the communication jade slip that the demon clan usually uses. However, the person who sent me the message is not a demon clan member. It is my family member who has infiltrated the demon clan to be my spy." Family member? Informant? Yun Yao immediately frowned. She was full of doubts, but she couldn't think of a reason. Luo Li was also confused. She shook her head and said, "Your family member? Then, it is a human? How can a human disguise as a demon clan member?" Ji Tianxing did not explain further. He lowered his head and looked at the communication jade slip. He used his divine sense to read the content. The content of the jade slip was very short. There was only one short sentence. Brother Tianqing, a few days ago, the great demon saint led a large group of experts and left the demon palace. He said that he would kill you personally. Run. The words in the jade slip were of course from Ji Ku's mouth. Her tone was very anxious and urgent. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned with a serious look in his eyes. Yun Yao and Luo Li were puzzled and quickly asked, Tianqing, what's the news? What the hell is going on? Ji Tianqing slowly put away the communication jade slip. He looked at Yun Yao and said in a serious tone, Yao Yao, there's something I haven't told you. Demon, 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 demon god. To the demon, 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 demon. Those experts were captured and brought back to the demon god's lair. He used an ancient demon Dao secret technique to refine them into blood-robed guards. Unfortunately, Ku was among them. She was also captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. But fortunately, she had another fortuitous encounter and was not truly demonized. Since then, she has been hiding in the demon clan's lair. She often sends me messages and reports. What? It was the first time that Yun Yao had heard of this. She was shocked and worried. She was captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. She became a blood-robed guard? No. This is too dangerous. The demon clan has always been treacherous and cunning. Ku is hiding in the demon clan's lair and often sends you messages. Her identity will be exposed sooner or later. Ku, doesn't she want to live anymore? Tianqing, you have to make her leave as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing looked at her calmly. He shook his head and said, Yao Yao, I tried to persuade Ku, but she insisted on being a spy. I couldn't persuade her. However, you don't have to worry too much. Ku has a treasure to protect her body. Her disguise is perfect. Even I can't tell the difference. Even if she really encounters danger, that treasure can protect her. She won't lose her life. Hearing his words, Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. Luo Li couldn't wait any longer. She asked, Ji Tianqing, did Ku send you a message? Did she report the demon clan's lair? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Ku sent me a message. The great demon saint has left the demon clan's lair with a large number of experts to kill us. This time, the enemy has a lot of people. They are coming with great momentum. They are determined to win. The great demon saint. Yun Yao frowned and said worriedly, before the return of the ancestor demon god, he was the strongest expert of the demon clan. He was the expert closest to becoming a god. We have to leave the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will be in danger of losing our lives. Luo Li's pupils shrank. A sharp cold light flashed in her eyes. However, she wasn't afraid. She said proudly, I have heard of the great demon saint's fierce name. However, I have never had the chance to see it. If he really finds us, I will fight with him and see how strong he is. Yao Yao, don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt you. Ji Tianqing glanced at Luo Li. He didn't refute her. He said in a low voice, It will take at most 10 days to get here from the demon clan's lair. We don't have much time. After 10 days, the great demon saint will find us. Of course, we have to find the god bead. No matter how dangerous it is, we can't give up. However, we only want to find the god bead. We can't fight with the great demon saint for now. Yun Yao and Luo Li nodded. They didn't refute. For the next 8 days, Ji Tianqing and the other 2 divine dragons carried out a thorough search in the desert. During this period, they encountered many troubles. Every day, there would be groups of ghosts coming to besiege them, trying to devour their souls and flesh. These ghosts were quite strong and difficult to deal with. It took a lot of effort for them to deal with them. Other than the ghosts, they also encountered terrifying quicksand, fire, cracks in the void, and other dangers. There were a few times when the 2 divine dragons were injured to protect them. The 3 of them managed to turn danger into safety, successfully overcoming the crisis. After 8 days of searching, Ji Tianqing and the rest finally understood why the Ghost Desert was called a forbidden area. Even an ordinary tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to survive in this place. They could lose their lives at any time. On the 9th day, Ji Tianqing and the other two had already searched 70% of the Ghost Desert. It was a pity that they didn't find any information or clues about the God Bead, even though they had experienced many dangers. The three of them were tired. They were covered in dust and their eyes were dim. The flame of hope in their hearts was also gradually weakening. However, God's arrangement was always so wonderful. The more you look forward to it, the harder it is to fulfill your wish. Chapter 20:31. It was noon, the time when the power of the stars was the strongest. The thick clouds and black aura in the sky above the Ghost Desert had faded a lot. Faint golden light spilled down from the gaps in the clouds. The Ghost Desert, which had always been dark and gloomy, was dispelled a little bit and brightened up. At this moment, while Ji Tianqing, Luoli, and Luoli were flying over a low-lying sandy area, Yun Yao suddenly frowned. "Stop!" She, who had always been calm and quiet, suddenly ordered the glazed fiery dragon to stop. The glazed fiery dragon immediately stopped. Ji Tianqing and Luoli also turned to look at Yun Yao with expectant eyes. "Yao Yao, what's wrong?" "Yao Yao, why did you suddenly stop? Did you sense something?" Yun Yao didn't say anything. She stood still on the back of the glazed fiery dragon and closed her eyes. She lowered her head slightly and held it with both hands. She seemed to be listening to something or thinking deeply. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing and Luoli guessed that she must have sensed something. Sure enough, after around 20 breaths of time, Yun Yao's body suddenly trembled, and she opened her eyes. She revealed a face full of surprise and joy, her clear eyes bursting with a thick light of joy. "I knew it! It's the God Orb! It must be the aura of the God Orb!" She looked towards the northwest with sparkling eyes and said excitedly, "Tianqing, Luoli, I just sensed the aura of the God Orb. It's in that direction." Ji Tianqing and Luoli looked at each other and were also pleasantly surprised. They were happy for Yun Yao. "Yao Yao, are you serious? Yao Yao, you really sense the aura of the God Orb?" Yun Yao nodded with certainty. "Although it's just a slight aura, I'm not wrong. It's the aura of the God Orb." To her, the God Orb was the most intimate, familiar, and important thing in her soul. Ji Tianqing and Luoli both believed that she wouldn't make a mistake. Thus, the three of them did not hesitate any longer. They hurriedly rode the divine dragon and flew towards the northwest. Ji Tianqing and Luoli rode on their respective divine dragons to observe the surrounding terrain and use their divine senses to explore their surroundings. Yun Yao sat on the fire dragon's back and concentrated on sensing the divine pearl. "Over there. Go a little further west. It shouldn't be too far away. Just another 50 li to the north. It's getting closer and closer. I can feel the aura of the divine orb becoming clearer and clearer. It's just north of us, 200 miles away right there." Yun Yao sensed the aura of the divine orb and pointed the way for Ji Tianqing and Luoli. Half an hour later, the three of them had flown over 1,000 miles and arrived at their destination. Ji Tianqing and Luoli frowned when they heard what Yun Yao said about the place where the sacred pearl was hidden. All around them was a boundless black desert. In front of them, there was a whirlpool with a radius of 100 miles. It was a bottomless pit formed by black sand. The bottom of the pit was dark and empty, and it kept swallowing the sand. The terrain here was the lowest. The black sand from all directions gathered here, and was swallowed by the black hole in the whirlpool. No one knew where the black hole was connected to. No matter how much sand was poured in, it couldn't be filled up. It's so strange. If there are whirlpools in the sea, there must be an eye of the sea. How can there be a whirlpool in the desert? Luoli stood in the sky and looked down at the whirlpool. She frowned in confusion. Ji Tianqing stared at the whirlpool and observed it for a while. He then said seriously, Under some circumstances, sand is no different from seawater. They will both flow with the waves. If I'm not wrong, the black hole under the black sand whirlpool is connected to an alternate dimension. That's why it can't be filled up. Luoli and Yunyao were enlightened when they heard that. They nodded to show that they understood. I see. I wonder where this whirlpool that appeared in the center of the ghost desert is connected to an alternate dimension. Where does it lead to? The two girls stared at the black hole at the bottom of the whirlpool. Their eyes were shining as if they wanted to see through it. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a smile as he teased. Perhaps it's an ancient ruin, or perhaps it's a demon's den. Of course, it could also be an abandoned space. After he said that, he turned to Yun Yao and asked, Yao Yao, you're very close to the God Pearl now. You should be able to determine the approximate location of the God Pearl, right? Yun Yao nodded and pointed to the bottom of the whirlpool. She said with certainty, the aura of the God Pearl is coming from the bottom of the whirlpool. It seems like the God Pearl is in the alternate dimension at the bottom of the whirlpool. Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. No wonder you kept saying that the aura of the God Pearl is very weak. Previously, I thought that the God Pearl had been lost for too long and its power had weakened. Now that I think about it, the God Pearl is actually hidden in the alternate dimension. No wonder its aura is so weak. Since the God Pearl was hidden under the whirlpool, the three of them naturally had to enter the whirlpool to search for it. However, the black sand whirlpool was filled with black gas. It was mysterious and eerie. One look and they could tell that it was an extremely dangerous place. Of course, the three of them would not enter rashly. They still had to make some preparations. Ji Tianxing said with a solemn face, the ghost desert is a forbidden area. The black sand whirlpool in the center of the desert is even more dangerous. I dare to guess that there are definitely many experts who have discovered this black sand whirlpool. However, ordinary people do not dare to enter it. Most of the people who enter rashly are either dead or have fallen. We must be careful. Yun Yao nodded in agreement. Luoli said expressionlessly, we know what you said very well. There's no need to say anything else. Ji Tianxing did not say anything else and went straight to the point. I'll go down first and scout ahead. Luoli will follow behind me. If there's an unexpected situation, she can take care of me and protect Yao Yao. Yao Yao will follow behind Luoli. Luoli and Black Dragon will bring up the rear. Pay attention to protecting Yao Yao. After assigning the tasks, he held the sword of burial of heaven and stepped into the black sand whirlpool first. Swoosh! As soon as he entered the black sand whirlpool, a terrifying suction force attacked and enveloped Ji Tianxing's body. The suction force was extraordinary. Even a tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to resist. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing was already prepared. After his body shook a few times, he quickly stabilized. Everyone, be careful. He shouted in a low voice and cast a spell to form a magic shield. Then, he flew toward the bottom of the whirlpool. Luoli, Yunyao, and the two divine dragons followed behind him and landed at a moderate speed. The deeper they went into the whirlpool, the stronger the suction force they had to endure. At the same time, the endless black fog and demonic aura, as well as the fierce wind that was as sharp as swords, were constantly corroding and killing them. Ji Tianxing tried his best to resist, while Luoli dealt with it calmly. She still had the strength to protect Yun Yao. The two divine dragons could only resist with all their might and proceed cautiously. Finally, after an hour, everyone reached the bottom of the black sand whirlpool. Chapter 2032. Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks and stared at the black hole under his feet. He frowned in confusion. He could clearly sense that the black hole was not ordinary. It actually released a powerful void power. Moreover, this black hole looked circular. In fact, the edges of the black hole were not neat. There were many cracks and corners. It was like a mirror that had a big hole punched out. Strange, this black hole is actually a void crack? And it doesn't look like it was formed naturally. When I was under the broken soul cliff, I also found a void crack that led to the void outside the world. That void crack was caused by the collision of the star core of the illusory spirit world. I wonder, how did this void crack appear? Just as Ji Tianxing was pondering, Luo Li behind him urged impatiently, Ji Tianxing, what are you doing here? Go in quickly. This is the most dangerous place. If we stay any longer, we will consume a lot of our magic power. It is also very dangerous. Ji Tianxing nodded and reminded them, this black hole is a void crack. After passing through the black hole, it is very likely to be the void. Everyone, be careful. Hearing his words, Luo Li could not help but frown. She quickly cast a spell to form a shield to protect Yun Yao. Of course, she could distinguish the void power and knew that Ji Tianxing was not lying. She also knew that only martial sages could walk in the void. It was very dangerous for tribulation stage powerhouses to stay in the void. They could lose their lives at any time. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing stepped into the black hole first. His figure flashed and was swallowed by the darkness. Luo Li followed without hesitation and disappeared into the black hole. Then, Yun Yao and the two divine dragons entered one after another. Silence was restored in the vortex as if no one had been there. Swoosh! In the next moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly felt his body become light and entered a cold and dark space. He used his magic power to protect his body. He quickly opened his eyes and released his divine sense to explore his surroundings. After seeing the surroundings clearly, he immediately frowned and revealed a playful expression. Sure enough, I have really entered the void. Just as he expected, he was now standing in the vast and icy cold void. In all directions, within a radius of several thousand miles, there was nothing at all. Behind him was the vast void. In the distance, he could vaguely see dense silver light dots that were shining brightly. Those were the billions of stars in the universe. And in front of him, about 100,000 miles away, was an extremely huge and colorful star. The surface of the star was shrouded in a layer of faint golden light. It was tranquil and peaceful. Ji Tianxing was no stranger to this huge star. This was the five elements world that he lived in. In the next moment, Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the two divine dragons appeared beside him. Luo Li, on the other hand, was still fine. She didn't need to use her magic power to protect her body, and she was able to stay in the void without any injuries. Yun Yao was protected by a shield, so she was safe. However, even though the glazed fire dragon and the black dragon had the bodies of divine dragons, they could not withstand the power of the void. The two divine dragons were trembling, and they felt as though their bodies were being pricked by needles. In the gaps between the dragon's scales, there were small wounds and some fine drops of blood seeped out. When Ji Tianxing saw this, he knew that the two of them could not stay in the void. Otherwise, they would be injured. Black Dragon, return to the sword and rest. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a ray of golden light shot out, sending the black dragon into the sword world. Yun Yao also hurriedly took out a fiery red jade box and stored the glazed fire dragon inside. In the void, only Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li were left. Yun Yao looked around and her face and eyes were filled with shock and surprise. This is unbelievable. So this is the void. This is the first time I have seen it with my own eyes. I didn't expect the five elements world that we are in to be like this. Luo Li nodded in agreement and said emotionally, the cultivation of martial arts is the process of strengthening oneself and understanding the universe. Only when one reaches the martial sage realm can one walk in the void and see the void. Even though I have entered the void many times, I only stayed for a short while. The beautiful and eternal void is something that I can never get enough of. Ji Tianxing did not interrupt. He looked at the five elements world and observed the direction that they had come from. It was a pity that they were too far away and he did not see anything strange. He waited for an hour and waited for Yun Yao and Luo Li to finish admiring the void. Then, he flew back with the two ladies. Luoli was puzzled and asked, Ji Tianqing, it is rare for you to enter the void. You should take a few more looks at such a magnificent void. It will be beneficial for your cultivation in the future. Are you in such a hurry to go back? Don't you want to look at it for a while longer? Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, It is just the void. It will not change. What is there to look at? Don't forget that we are here to look for the divine pearl. We have to finish our business as soon as possible. Luoli frowned again and asked, Look for the divine pearl? Then we have to find the alternate space connected to the vortex. What is the use of going back in such a hurry? Ji Tianqing looked at the 5 elements world in front of him and pointed at the mysterious golden light. He said, If I am not wrong, the answer is there. Luoli glanced at him and looked at the 5 elements world suspiciously. Naturally, she did not believe him. However, Ji Tianqing insisted on checking it out. She could only be patient. Soon, 12 hours had passed. The 3 of them flew for 120,000 miles in the void before they reached the edge of the 5 elements world and arrived at the golden light seal. Only when he got closer could he see that there was a metal block that was over 10 miles long embedded in the hazy golden barrier. The bronze-colored metal block was elongated, like a primitive mineral vein. Its shape was not regular. Its surface was distorted and full of holes. At first glance, the huge metal block looked like a sharp knife that pierced through the golden light barrier and stabbed into the 5 elements world. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and nodded to himself. Indeed, as I expected. Another foreign object hit the 5 elements world and pierced a crack in the void. However, this huge metal block, why does it look so familiar? He vaguely felt that the curved and rough metal block did not look like a mine or a star core. It looked like a divine ship driven by the upper realm gods. However, this divine ship had been destroyed and was completely deformed. That was why he could not recognize it. Luoli and Yun Yao also stared at the metal block and looked excited and expectant. Tianqing, you have good eyesight. You can see this strange metal block from hundreds of thousands of miles away? Yao Yao, don't flatter Ji Tianqing. Luoli rolled her eyes at Yun Yao and pretended to be serious. You want to see a metal block that's 10 miles long from hundreds of thousands of miles away? That's like letting you see a mosquito that's thousands of miles away. Yun Yao was not angry when she heard this. Instead, she was even more excited and expectant. So, Tianqing didn't see this metal block, but he already knew that there was a problem here? Chapter 2033. Yun Yao's words proved Ji Tianqing's conjecture. The 3 of them hurriedly flew through the void and landed on the huge piece of metal. During the flight, Luoli frowned and sized up Ji Tianqing. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Ji Tianqing did not look sideways. He only stared at the piece of metal and did not care about Luoli's reaction. Just as they were about to land on the bronze metal, Luoli could not help but ask, Ji Tianqing, how do you know there's a problem here? You can't see this piece of metal from hundreds of thousands of miles away. Ji Tianqing glanced at her and said calmly, I don't rely on my eyes. I rely on this. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at his head. Luoli's expression froze. She frowned and muttered unhappily in her heart, Despicable bastard, how dare he mock me for being brainless? This bastard, it's as if he didn't say anything. He must have come to the void and experienced something like this before to be able to think of this. But that's not right. With his strength, it's impossible for him to break through the spatial barrier and come to the void. The more Luoli thought about it, the more confused she became. She only felt that Ji Tianqing was too mysterious, making it harder for her to see through him. After a while, the 3 of them landed on the huge piece of bronze metal. Everyone spread out and observed this piece of metal from a close distance, looking for the whereabouts of the divine pearl. Only then did Ji Tianqing realize that his guess was completely correct. This piece of bronze metal was the battleship that the deity had piloted. However, the deity battleship was severely damaged. It was already broken and distorted to the extreme, and only a wreckage was left. He could roughly see that the deity battleship was originally exquisite and magnificent, divine and majestic. This deity battleship was at least a deity battleship. In its complete state, it was at least 30 miles long and could accommodate 100,000 soldiers. However, the destructive battle had caused the deity battleship to be distorted and deformed, turning it into scrap metal. Even the surface of the metal was covered with burn marks from the divine fire. The deity battleship fell from the void like a meteor streaking across the void. More than half of it was burned. Therefore, when the deity battleship finally reached this place, only a blurry wreckage was left. Even so, the divine warship was made of superior divine metal and was extremely sturdy. After crashing into the Five Elements world, the wreckage of the divine warship broke through the golden light seal and pierced through the spatial barrier. It was precisely because of this that a spatial tear had appeared in the ghost desert and was difficult to heal. After understanding the origin of the space crack, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, before I ascended in my previous life, the world of 5 elements was peaceful and peaceful. There weren't so many strange things. But now, strange things kept happening. First, the phantom spirit world was destroyed, and the star core crashed into the 5 elements world, forming a space crack. Now, another divine battleship had crashed, and its wreckage had also pierced into the 5 elements world, creating a spatial crack. A great world was destroyed, and then a divine ship crashed. Perhaps it was a coincidence that something strange happened. But for strange things to happen one after another, that was too abnormal. So many things had happened in 1,000 years? It seems like disputes have arisen in the universe, and the myriad worlds are not at peace. Ji Tianxing sighed and recalled that he had seen the phantom spirit star core and the divine battleship with his own eyes. On the surface of the world of 5 elements, there might still be many wreckages. It was just that he had not seen them yet. Although the world of 5 elements is big, it's an ordinary star in the universe. The probability of various star cores and divine battleship wreckages falling into the void and crashing into the world of 5 elements is very small. From this, it can be seen that these strange things and battles happened not far from the world of 5 elements. Moreover, the scale of the battle must not be small. Ordinary powerhouses would only feel surprised and incredulous when they saw the appearance of the divine battleship wreckage. But Ji Tianxing was different. He was once a divine king whose might shook the heavens. He traversed the galaxy and was experienced and knowledgeable. From these 2 small matters, he could deduce many clues. In the depths of his soul, a trace of uneasiness also faintly emerged. He had an ominous premonition. Perhaps, not long after, the world of 5 elements would also face a disaster. Just as he was thinking to himself, Yun Yao's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Tianxing, come over and see. Ji Tianxing came back to his senses and looked up at Yun Yao. He saw that she was standing at the bow of the divine battleship wreckage 5 miles away. The bow of the divine battleship had long been twisted. But he could still see that the bow of the divine battleship was in the shape of a shuttle. It was like a sharp thorn that pierced deeply into the world of 5 elements. The endless black sand in the ghost desert poured down from the spatial rift and poured into the bow of the divine battleship. But the strange thing was that the sharp and narrow bow of the divine battleship clearly could not hold much, but it seemed to never be full. No matter how much black sand poured in, it was never full or overflowed. Yun Yao and Luoli were standing at the bow of the divine battleship, staring at the endless black sand pouring down like a flood and pouring into the bow of the divine battleship. The 2 of them looked carefully and clicked their tongues in wonder. They became more and more curious about the divine battleship wreckage. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and came beside the 2 of them. He looked at the black sand and the bow of the divine battleship. After observing for a while, he asked, Yao Yao, are you sure that the divine pearl is here? Yun Yao quickly nodded and said with certainty, "It's so close. My senses will not be wrong. It's under our feet, about 1,000 feet deep." 1,000 feet deep? Ji Tianxing frowned and pointed at the divine battleship wreckage under his feet. He said with a troubled expression, "It's such a solid lump of metal. How can we dig 1,000 feet deep?" Luoli glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "What's so difficult about that? It's just the wreckage of a magic treasure. Once I cut it open, I can smoothly take out the divine pearl." As she spoke, a cold light shone in her palms, and 2 ice crystal short swords appeared. This pair of ice crystal short swords was called Still Water. It was a top-grade sacred artifact that martial god Luo Shui had personally refined and given to Luoli. It was no exaggeration to say that this pair of short swords was already a top-grade magic treasure weapon on the continent, second only to a divine artifact. Luoli held the still water swords with both hands and channeled her energy with a solemn expression. She released a vast amount of energy and slowly stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. 2 palm-wide, 10-meter-long icy sword lights emitted an incomparably sharp aura as they pierced towards the bronze metal. Yun Yao stared at her movements, her eyes full of anticipation. Ji Tianxing watched coldly from the side, waiting to see Luoli suffer. In the next moment, 2 crisp sounds of metal clashing rang out, shaking the entire divine battleship wreckage. Clang! Clang! The icy sword lights that Luoli had unleashed shattered inch by inch, turning into fragments that scattered in the void. On the other hand, the bronze metal was not damaged at all, not even leaving a mark. Such a scene caused Yun Yao to frown and reveal a look of confusion. Luoli was also stunned, and her expression was a little awkward. However, she was very unwilling to give up. She waved her swords with all her might and stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. Chapter 2034. The still water swords shone with a cold light as they pierced toward the bronze metal with an unstoppable force. However, there were 2 crisp clangs that shook the void. The entire wreckage of the divine warship shook uncontrollably. The 2 sword lights collapsed with a loud bang, shattering into pieces of cold light that scattered in the void. Luoli was angry and wanted to cut open the divine warship wreckage, so she used a secret technique and unleashed 120% of her power. However, the divine warship wreckage was still unscathed and did not even leave a mark. Instead, the horrifying recoil passed through the still water swords and into her body, causing her to retreat a dozen steps before she could regain her footing. Her face was as white as paper, and her chest rose and fell rapidly. It took her a lot of effort to suppress the chaotic magic power. However, a thick sense of shame and embarrassment filled her heart, causing her expression to be unsightly and unable to get off the stage. After a moment of silence, she suppressed the embarrassment in her heart. When she looked up, she saw Ji Tianxing looking at her with a faint smile. Luoli's heart trembled as she glared at him and shouted coldly, "What are you looking at? I didn't expect this artifact wreckage to be so tough, so I slipped up. This artifact wreckage must be a divine artifact for it to be so indestructible. My still water swords are only divine artifacts, so of course they can't cut it open." Divine artifact? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Yun Yao with a smile. "Yao Yao, didn't Divine Master Luo Shui give you a reverse water sword? Lend it to Luoli and let her try again." Yun Yao naturally agreed and quickly took out the reverse water sword and handed it to Luoli. Luoli took the reverse water sword and glared at Ji Tianxing. Then, she held the sword with both hands and used her energy to slash at the divine warship wreckage. With her previous experience, she was extra cautious this time. She had to unleash 100% of her power and leave a backup plan to avoid being injured by the recoil. Whoosh! The reverse water sword shone with an icy blue sword light and released the power of a divine sword as it slashed at the ancient bronze metal. Clang! A sharp, ear-piercing, and long metallic sound exploded in the void. The wreckage of the divine warship trembled violently for a few dozen times before it finally calmed down. Even though Luoli was prepared for it, she was still forced back 3 steps by that terrifying power. However, the ancient bronze metal was still in perfect condition, without even a crack. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that there was a shallow white mark on the surface of the metal. Such an outcome caused Luoli to be dumbfounded, and her entire being was stunned. How is this possible? Even the divine sword that the divine master had personally refined was unable to unravel the remains of this magic treasure? It was too unbelievable. Could it be that the quality of this artifact's remains surpasses that of a divine artifact? In Luo Li's heart, the strongest person on the Shenwu continent was the Luo Shui martial god. The most powerful magical treasures and weapons were naturally divine artifacts refined by divine masters. However, the scene before her eyes was too great a blow and shock to her. It overturned her understanding. Even the broken remains of a magic treasure were so tough that even the divine sword could not harm it. If this magic treasure was complete, how powerful would it be? When she thought of this, Luoli suddenly raised her head and looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze. She shouted, "Ji Tianxing, you already knew that there was something wrong with this artifact's remains, didn't you?" Ji Tianxing did not deny it and nodded. Luoli became even angrier and said with a sullen expression, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Why did you have to watch me make a fool of myself?" Ji Tianxing looked at her innocently and spread out his hands. "But you didn't ask me." "You!" Luoli was so angry that her eyes widened. She wished she could beat him up. When Yun Yao saw that the two of them were about to quarrel again, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Luoli, don't be angry with Tianxing. Let's get down to business first. This artifact's remains came from beyond the heavens, so it must be extraordinary. It's not strange for its quality to surpass that of a divine artifact. We have to think of a way now. How can we take the god bead out of the artifact's remains?" Luo Li's face showed that she was in a difficult position. She shook her head and said, "Yao Yao, you also saw that neither my still water sacred sword nor your reverse water divine sword could cut open the artifact's remains." Halfway through her words, she glanced at Ji Tianxing and said unhappily, "Anyway, I don't have a way. Your husband is so smart and has extraordinary means. He definitely won't let you down." Although she said this, she seemed to be very confident in Ji Tianxing. However, her eyes and tone carried a bit of ridicule. It was obvious that she wanted to see Ji Tianxing make a fool of himself. "If I, Luo Li, can't do it, then Ji Tianxing, you can do it if you have the ability. When you can't do it and make a fool of yourself in front of everyone, see how I'll retaliate and laugh at you." Luo Li thought to herself. She was actually a bit proud and expectant. Yun Yao's expression was still calm. However, the light of hope in her bright eyes gradually dimmed. She turned around and looked at Ji Tianxing. She asked in a gentle voice, "Tianxing, you seem to know a lot about the artifact's remains. Do you have a way?" She was obviously unwilling to give up and still had a trace of hope. After all, the god bead was too important to her. Ji Tianxing obviously understood her feelings. He stretched out his hands to support her shoulders and comforted her with a gentle smile. "Yao Yao, don't worry. Not to mention the god bead hidden in the remains of the divine battleship. Even if you want the stars in the sky, I'll pluck them for you." Hearing this, Yun Yao's dim eyes immediately brightened up and surged with a strong sense of hope. "Tianxing, I believe in you. I've long known that there's nothing in this world that can stop you." Standing to the side, Luo Li couldn't help curling her lips as she looked at the couple's loving and sweet posture. She muttered, "Some people only know how to use flowery words to coax women, but they don't seem to have any real ability. You're bragging, but when the time comes and you can't do it, don't find excuses." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao heard her clearly. However, they just smiled at each other and ignored her. Yun Yao and Luo Li were good friends. She knew that Luo Li was holding back her anger, which was why she was so eccentric. Moreover, Yun Yao was a generous person, so she didn't argue with Luo Li. Ji Tianxing ignored her. It wasn't that he was magnanimous, but that he didn't want to refute her. After a while, Ji Tianxing let go of Yun Yao and said seriously, "All right, Yao Yao, time is running out. Let's not waste any more time. I'll take out the god bead for you now, but I need your help." Yun Yao didn't doubt him at all. She quickly nodded and said, "Okay." After that, Ji Tianxing pulled her to the edge of the ship's bow and explained patiently, "As you can see, this magical treasure has been destroyed and turned into a solid iron lump. I don't know why the god bead was hidden in the remains. However, I'm sure that the endless black sand in the ghost desert must have been swallowed by the god bead after it was poured into the remains of the magical treasure. We can't break open the remains of the magical treasure by force. I can only use the metal dividing technique to open a passage for the god bead." Chapter 2035. The Art of Dividing Metal and Transforming God? Why have I never heard of such a technique? Yun Yao and Luo Li both looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion. Ji Tianxing did not explain. He nodded slightly and said, "There's no time to lose. Yao Yao, let's begin." After saying that, he sat cross-legged on the bronze metal, closed his eyes, and began to cast the technique. His face was solemn. He made strange gestures with both hands and used all his strength to cast the secret technique. He released the bright light of the stars and poured it into the bow of the ship. The dazzling light of the stars contained a mysterious power. After entering the bronze metal, it trembled at a high frequency. The light of the stars seemed to have turned into thousands of silver lines. It broke down the incomparably tough divine metal and opened up a passage as thick as a bowl. Under Ji Tianxing's control, the silver light of the stars continued to extend downward. The passage as thick as a bowl also gradually extended toward the depths of the bow of the ship, approaching the divine pearl bit by bit. In the void, one could not feel the passage of time. It was unknown how much time had passed. Perhaps it was a day, perhaps it was 2 days. Ji Tianxing continued to cast the technique without stopping. His mental energy was greatly depleted. His face was pale, and beads of sweat seeped out of his body. His spirit was somewhat dispirited, and he was extremely tired. After all, he only had the strength of the tribulation realm, but he had to use the power of the stars to forcibly cast the divine technique. This was only an ordinary divine technique, and did not have much lethality. But he had already created a miracle. No matter how talented or monstrous he was, he could not hold on for a long time. Fortunately, the passage as thick as the mouth of a bowl had already extended nearly 300 meters. It was very close to the divine pearl. This was already his limit. If he wanted to dig any deeper, he would not be able to do it at all. Yun Yao and Luo Li saw this scene clearly. Of course, they were shocked and full of horror. Both of them found it hard to believe that Ji Tianxing had opened up a passage in the mysterious metal that even the reverse water divine sword could not break. What kind of amazing technique was this? Perhaps only a martial god could do this. Yun Yao was naturally overjoyed and proud of Ji Tianxing. On the other hand, Luo Li's expression was extremely complicated. She was both shocked and ashamed in her heart. But more than that, they were curious about Ji Tianxing. She really couldn't understand what kind of background Ji Tianxing had. What kind of identity and methods did he have to create miracles time and time again? At the same time, Ji Tianxing sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao, who was next to him. "Yao Yao, quickly communicate with the divine pearl and move it into the tunnel." Yun Yao had been waiting for a long time and was fully prepared. Hearing Ji Tianxing's voice transmission, she quickly closed her eyes and released her spiritual consciousness into the passage. Her soul consciousness followed the 100-zhang deep tunnel and entered the depths of the ship without any hindrance. When his divine sense reached the bottom of the tunnel, it was only 3 meters away from the divine pearl. However, it was this thick piece of divine metal that stood in the middle that made her feel pressured and difficult. The material of the divine metal was special. Not only was it abnormally strong, it could also block magic power and isolate divine sense. Fortunately, her divine sense and the divine pearl could be said to be very close. She could clearly feel that every trace of the divine pearl's aura was as if it was alive and breathing. She was anxious and worried, but she forced herself to calm down. She focused her will to control her divine sense and merge it with the divine pearl's aura. A quarter of an hour, half an hour. Soon, an hour had passed. Yun Yao's divine sense finally communicated with the divine pearl successfully. They breathed together and shared a destiny. She was pleasantly surprised and excited. She quickly used her divine sense to guide the divine pearl to move forward slowly. It was a dark, golden divine pearl. It was only the size of an egg and shone with a dazzling golden light. Its material was special. It could merge with the divine metal without any hindrance. It moved through the divine metal like a small fish swimming in the water. Yun Yao's divine sense was the thread that guided the small fish. The dark golden divine pearl moved bit by bit and got closer and closer to the tunnel. Ji Tianxing waited patiently. He gritted his teeth and held on tenaciously. Finally, Yun Yao controlled the divine pearl to pass through the thick divine metal and enter the tunnel. Without the obstruction of the divine metal, she immediately felt the pressure decrease greatly. Her connection with the divine pearl also became closer. Under the control of her mind, the divine pearl blossomed with a dazzling golden light and flew up along the bowl-sized passage. At the same time, Ji Tianxing also gradually retracted the starlight. The 1,000-feet-deep tunnel also began to close quickly from the bottom. Swoosh! After 100 breaths, the divine pearl passed through the 1,000-feet-deep tunnel and flew out of the divine metal. Yun Yao waved her sleeves and grabbed the divine pearl with her slender hand. She held it in her palm. Immediately after, Ji Tianxing also stopped casting and withdrew his magic power. The 1,000-feet-deep tunnel disappeared and returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. His mind relaxed, and he let out a sigh of relief. He hurriedly took out a pill and consumed it. He circulated his energy and refined the pill to replenish his magic power and mental energy. Luoli took 2 steps forward and came to Yun Yao's side. She stared at the divine pearl in her palm and revealed a look of surprise. "This is great. Yao Yao, you finally got this divine pearl?" Yun Yao held the divine pearl in her palm and was also filled with joy and excitement. She nodded and said sincerely, "Yes. Fortunately, Tianxing was here. He thought of this method and helped me get the divine pearl. Otherwise, even if the divine pearl was right in front of me, I would be helpless." Yun Yao spoke from the bottom of her heart and did not think too much about it. However, Luo Li's expression was rather awkward when she heard it. "Yes, yes, yes. Your Ji Tianxing is the most capable and powerful." Yun Yao turned her head to look at Luo Li and revealed a helpless bitter smile. She sent a sound transmission to Luo Li and asked, "Luo Li, you've always had a cold personality and you rarely get angry with others. Why are you at odds with Tianxing? You are the Divine Master's divine official. You are a magnanimous person. Don't get angry with Tianxing, okay?" Luo Li curled her lips and said unhappily, "It's not that I want to get angry with him, but he is really hateful. I get angry just by looking at him." Yun Yao was even more helpless. She smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that the two of you are born to be incompatible." Then, she stopped talking about this topic. After carefully putting away the divine pearl, she looked at the tip of the ship's bow. She saw endless black sand pouring down from the black hole and pouring onto the ship's bow. Previously, the divine pearl was hidden in the wreckage of the divine ship. No matter how much black sand poured down, it would disappear without a trace. However, now that the black sand poured into the bow, it quickly overflowed and scattered into the void. Seeing this, Yun Yao's eyes were filled with surprise. She said in a solemn tone, Tianqing was right. The black sand was indeed swallowed by the divine pearl. This fourth divine pearl can not only merge with metal, but it can also swallow sand and convert it into divine power. Chapter 2036. This dark gold god pearl was the fourth god pearl that Yun Yao had obtained. The first three were blue sea, star, and longevity. This one was called Earth Spirit. Without a doubt, after she refined the Earth Spirit god pearl, she would be able to control the power of the earth. However, this place was in the void, which was not suitable for cultivation. She could only keep the Earth Spirit God Pearl and refine it after she returned to the Luotian mountain. After about 2 days, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. His magic power and mental energy had recovered, and his strength had reached its peak. Seeing him get up, Luoli said expressionlessly, "The void is dangerous. Since we have obtained the God Pearl and your magic power has recovered, we should leave." Ji Tianqing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile, and said in a playful tone, "What? Divine official Luo predicted that I would not be able to do it, but I was lucky enough to do it. Divine official Luo, don't you have anything to say to me?" Luoli frowned and stared at him unhappily. "What do you want me to say?" Ji Tianqing pretended to think about it seriously, and said in a serious tone, "I have created an unimaginable miracle. You must be very shocked in your heart, and also admire me. However, you have a cold and arrogant personality, and you are not willing to admit defeat easily. It is impossible for you to show your admiration, so you can only hide it in your heart. I can understand your feelings and difficulties, and I will not force you to show your feelings. As long as you say, 'Young Master Ji, I am sorry,' I will forgive you for your previous rudeness. How about it? Am I being very lenient with you?" Luoli was dumbfounded, and stared at him in disbelief. Her face was covered with frost, and her anger was getting stronger. She never thought that Ji Tianqing would dare to say such words. After being stunned for a moment, she came back to her senses and angrily scolded, "Ji Tianqing, I have never seen such a shameless person like you. Who is shocked? Who admires you? Who admires you? You narcissistic, arrogant bastard. Even if I admire a pig or a donkey, I will never admire you. You want me to apologize to you? Dream on." Luoli was so angry that she almost went mad. Her status was so noble that for hundreds of years, no one had ever dared to act rashly in front of her. However, Ji Tianqing was completely unrestrained, which really opened her eyes. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. In his fury, his words became much more vicious, and he did not choose his words carefully. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He looked at her with a smile and said with a face full of surprise, "No? Miss Luoli, a dignified divine official, actually admired pigs and donkeys? TSK. Divine official Luo, your taste is really unique." Ji Tianqing. Luoli furrowed her brows in anger as she glared at Ji Tianqing. Pointing her finger at him, she shouted, You're shameless." No matter how angry and furious she was, even if she was trembling with anger, she was powerless to refute. After all, she did have the intention of laughing at Ji Tianqing. However, she did not expect that Ji Tianqing would create a miracle and really take out the divine pearl. Now that she was being ridiculed by Ji Tianqing, she could only endure it. Seeing that Luoli was angry, Yun Yao could only persuade Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, stop talking and let Luoli win." Ji Tianqing smiled at her and nodded. Yun Yao walked to Luoli's side and pulled her arm. She comforted, "Luoli, I believe that Tianqing didn't do it on purpose. Both of you should take a step back and stop being so angry, okay?" Luoli suppressed her anger with great difficulty and glared at Ji Tianqing. She said in a low voice, "I don't want to see him." Yun Yao smiled bitterly and could only persuade, "Okay, we'll do as you say. Our mission has been completed and we will leave soon. After we leave the northern underworld mountain, I'll let him go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains first. We'll go back to the Luotian mountain. Luoli shook her head without hesitation and said, I don't want to see him for even a second. Let's go now. After we return to the Ghost Desert, we'll go our separate ways. He'll go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains alone, and I'll escort you back to the Luotian mountain. Yun Yao naturally disagreed. She frowned and said, The northern underworld mountain is very dangerous. The great demon saint is leading a large group of experts to hunt him down. How can we let Tianxing go alone? It's too dangerous. Luoli also knew that this was a little inappropriate and hesitated. However, she was still angry. How could she give in? Isn't he very capable and has created miracles time and time again? It's just the northern underworld mountain and the great demon saint. What's there to be afraid of? Sigh. Yun Yao could only sigh helplessly. Ji Tianxing glanced at Luoli and thought to himself, women really can't be offended. Once they're angry, they're unreasonable. Seeing that Yun Yao was still comforting Luoli, he was too lazy to interrupt. He turned around and looked at the wreckage of the divine battleship. Although this divine battleship has crashed into wreckage, it still has 5 kilometers of divine gold left. This is the best material for forging and upgrading divine weapons. It can only be found in the realm of the gods. I have to think of a way to get this wreckage of the divine battleship. In the future, if the Sword of Burial of Heaven wants to be upgraded to a divine weapon, it will definitely be useful. With this thought in mind, he released his divine sense to cover the entire wreckage and carefully observed it. The wreckage of the divine battleship was cold and dead. It was silently inserted into the 5 elements world. Other than Ji Tianxing and the other 2, there was no other living thing in the wreckage of the divine battleship. There wasn't even a wisp of remnant soul. Moreover, all traces of the divine battleship had disappeared. Now, the wreckage of the divine battleship was really a messy pile of divine gold. This pile of divine gold is 5 kilometers long and weighs more than 100 million pounds. If I use my divine sense, I should be able to move it. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and cast a few golden palms to hug the wreckage of the divine battleship. He gritted his teeth and exerted all his strength, trying to pull the wreckage of the divine battleship out. However, the wreckage of the divine battleship was inserted into the 5 elements world. It was firmly stuck in the spatial barrier and could not move at all. Ji Tianxing was unwilling to give up. He repeatedly tried more than 10 times, but he could not move the wreckage of the divine battleship. He could not pull it out at all. Damn it! I can't pull it out, nor can I refine it. Could it be that I can only look on helplessly and do nothing about it? Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered about a solution. However, at this moment, a blood-red dot of light lit up in the void hundreds of kilometers away. That blood-red dot of light was like a shooting star that cut through the void. It was as fast as the aurora. Yun Yao and Luoli both sensed that something was wrong. They frowned and looked at that blood-red dot of light with vigilance. What's that? It seems like there's a strong fighter approaching and coming straight for us. I can sense a strong demonic aura. Oh no, it's a strong fighter from the demon clan. Both of them sensed that the situation was not good. Their expressions became sinister, and they became cautious and vigilant. Luoli also suppressed her anger. She stared at that dot of light, and a trace of fighting spirit surged in her eyes. In the blink of an eye, that blood-red dot of light came close and landed on the wreckage of the divine battleship. Swoosh! A blood-red light flashed, and 2 tall and burly figures appeared on the bronze wreckage of the divine battleship. They were 2 strong fighters from the demon clan with a strong demonic aura. Chapter 2037. Ji Tianxing, I've finally met you. The leader of the demon race was wearing a long robe that was as red as fire. There were pictures of white bones and demons embroidered on it. There was also a pair of mysterious ghost claws embroidered on his collar and chest. This person was more than 10 feet tall. He was burly and muscular. His hands that were exposed outside of his robe were a pair of black and cold sharp claws. His 5 sharp claws were long and sharp. There were also fine dragon scales on the surface of his skin that were emitting a black cold light. On his round head there was a pair of big eyes. His pupils were blue in color and were flickering with blue flames. He had an arrogant posture and a majestic aura. He was emitting a domineering aura that looked down on the world and an unparalleled killing intent. He glared at Ji Tianxing with his big eyes. His cold and majestic voice contained unconcealable joy and excitement. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li immediately concluded, "This demon dragon must be the most powerful person in the North Underworld Mountain and the leader of the 4 great demon saints." In comparison, the white-haired elder behind the great demon saint, who was wearing a purple robe, had 4 wings and 6 arms. He was much weaker in terms of aura. However, when Ji Tianxing saw the white-haired elder's face clearly, he frowned and his pupils contracted. Patriarch Xue Pao? Obviously, the skinny and ferocious-looking white-haired elder was the 4th great demon saint, Patriarch Xue Pao. Back in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianxing and the Huanglong Daoist had joined forces to severely injure Patriarch Xue Pao on the night that the Shihe sect was attacked. Patriarch Xue Pao's physical body was destroyed and only his severely injured divine soul was left. He had fled in panic. Ji Tianxing was sure that if Patriarch Xue Pao wanted to go into seclusion to heal his injuries, he would need at least a few decades or even a few centuries to recover. However, he knew the Ancestor Fiend Celestial's nature and knew that the Ancestor Fiend Celestial would not wait for such a long time. He would definitely use some kind of secret technique to help Patriarch Xue Pao recover his strength as soon as possible. But now Patriarch Xue Pao appeared in the void. His body was intact and his strength had not decreased. The difference was that Patriarch Xue Pao's body had changed. His body was as red as fire. He had 4 wings and 6 arms and his purple hair had turned white. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianxing was certain that he had guessed correctly. The Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to restore Patriarch Xue Pao in the shortest period of time. However, there must have been severe consequences and severe consequences. Sure enough, Ancestor Xue Pao stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze and grinned coldly. "Ji Tianxing, we met again. Ha 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 ha. You definitely didn't expect this, did you? This old man has actually recovered his strength in such a short period of time." Patriarch Xue Pao's voice was low and hoarse. His tone was cold and filled with hatred. "Not long ago, this old man received the news that you had barged into the North Underworld Mountain, and the great Devil Saint wanted to kill you personally. Such a heaven-sent opportunity, how could this old man miss it? Let'll see how. Of you! Today, even if a god descends, he will not be able to save you." Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a mocking tone, "You recovered your strength so quickly. The ancestral devil god must have helped you. If I'm not wrong, the Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to refine you into a magic treasure of the Devil Dao? Ha ha ha! To be refined into a magic treasure, you must have suffered inhumane pain and torture, right?" Patriarch Xue Pao was exposed and poked at his sore spot. He recalled the pain and torture he had endured when the Ancestor Fiend Celestial threw him into the abyss of the Blood Sea and refined him into a magic treasure. For half a year, his soul had been tortured hundreds of thousands of times. He was constantly crushed, distorted, and then restored to his original form. That was the most painful experience in his life. It was also a memory that he did not want to talk about. It was too painful. It was too terrifying. Now that Ji Tianxing was mocking him, Patriarch Xue Pao was enraged. He roared hysterically. "Ji Tianxing, you despicable beast, reptile! The pain and torture that I had to endure was all because of you. Originally, I could have gone into seclusion to recuperate for 100 years. After recovering my strength, I would have sought revenge on you. However, I could not wait that long. I would not give you the chance to grow. I gave up the possibility of increasing my realm. I could not break through in my lifetime, just to kill you as soon as possible. Today, if I don't tear you into pieces and burn you into ashes, how can I get rid of the hatred in my heart? I will let you have a taste of the pain of having your body and soul crushed 1,000,000 times. Patriarch Xue Pao was furious. It went to his head and made him crazy. After roaring, he was about to charge towards Ji Tianxing and tear Ji Tianxing into pieces. However, the great demon sage, who was standing in front of him, stretched out his hand and stopped him. The great demon sage looked coldly at Yun Yao and Luoli. He sneered proudly and said, I came to the ghost desert to kill Ji Tianxing. I did not expect that the heavens would bless me and give me such a big gift. One is the number one god's disciple of the Luo Shui kingdom, the future goddess. The other is the personal maid of the Luo Shui martial god, the most trusted divine official. After I kill Ji Tianxing, I will take you back to the demon palace and make you my concubines. By then, the reaction of the Luo Shui martial god and the people of the god's kingdom will be very interesting, right? After saying that, the great demon sage sneered. His tone was very evil. Patriarch Xue Pao was also very proud. He sneered contemptuously and said, Great demon sage, these two lowly human slaves are so ugly. For them to be able to become your concubines and receive your favor, that is the fortune of their 8 lifetimes. Ha 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 ha! The great demon sage laughed wildly and nodded. That's right. That's right. I am also making such a sacrifice for the great cause of my people. Luoli and Yun Yao were so angry that their faces were pale. Their eyes were filled with shame and anger. Especially Luoli, she was so angry that her body was trembling. Flames of killing intent surged out from behind her. Great demon sage, I have long heard of your fierce reputation and that you are the number one expert of the North Underworld Mountain. Luoli is not talented, but as the great divine official under the Divine Master, I have long wanted to kill you and make a name for myself. Today you have chased me into the void, so I have to thank you. Thank you for coming to die and giving me a chance to make a name for myself. Luoli's tone was cold. Her eyes were cold, and her body was emitting an invisible heroic aura. Her chest was burning with a burning desire to fight. Her hands glowed, and 2 ice crystal daggers appeared in her hands. Great demon sage, I, Luoli, will take your life. Luoli shouted. Without hesitation, she held the still water dual swords and rushed toward the great demon sage. 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were released. Moon Star Water. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were more than 10 miles long. They were as dazzling as the moon in the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles of the void. Chapter 2038. Luoli had long wanted to compete with the great demon saint. Now that she had made her move, she naturally used all of her strength. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights locked onto the great demon saint's consciousness and aura, and attacked him from both sides, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Even if he tried to teleport away, it would be useless. The sword lights would cut through the void and chase after the great demon saint. Of course, the great demon saint was arrogant and did not bother to dodge. You want to take my life with such little tricks? You are too naive. The great demon saint sneered and immediately raised his hands, clenched his fists, and punched at the 2 sword lights. From his palms, a cold and deathly blue brilliance surged out and condensed into 2 huge black dragon claws, slapping at the 2 sword lights. Kaboom! The deafening sound of the collision exploded in the void. A violent force burst out, shaking the surrounding hundreds of miles. Even the wreckage of the divine battleship trembled and shook. The sword lights and the black dragon claws collapsed at the same time, turning into streams of light and scattering in the void. Luoli waved the short sword in her hands, and sword lights filled the sky once again, attacking the great demon saint. The great demon saint did not retreat, and with his black dragon claws, he released a monstrous demonic shadow and fought with Luoli. The two martial saints fought fiercely in the sky. Light and shadow flew in all directions, and layers of shock waves were generated. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ancestor Shui Pao roared and turned into a bloody light, pouncing toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, you bastard, give me your life! Ancestor Shui Pao roared and flapped his four wings, waving his 6 arms, and releasing bloody light blades that covered the sky. Ji Tianxing was immediately enveloped by the bloody light blades, and had to bear the attack of thousands of bloody light blades. However, he was not afraid, and with a flash of brilliance in his right hand, the sword of burial of heaven appeared. 7-star sword. With a thrust of the sword of burial of heaven, 49 giant swords formed a mysterious formation and bloomed in all directions. With a series of muffled bangs, the cold light of the huge sword shattered the blood-red blades that filled the sky, tearing out a huge gap. More than half of the remaining bloody blades were destroyed by Yun Yao. The remaining hundreds of sharp blades pierced Ji Tianxing, but they did not have much power, they did not injure him at all. Seeing this, Patriarch Shui Pao's pupils constricted, revealing an extremely shocked expression. Ji Tianxing, your physical body is actually comparable to a martial saint expert? How is this possible? He remembered clearly that Ji Tianxing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. How could he possess the physical body of a martial sage? While he was still in a daze, Ji Tianxing had already transformed into a streak of light and charged over with sword in hand. Heaven-cleaving sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed out a 1,000-foot-long golden sword toward Patriarch Shui Pao. The sword light was dazzling and extraordinarily powerful. Even the void was rippling. Patriarch Shui Pao did not dare to be careless. He quickly suppressed his shock and focused on his opponent. With a swoosh, he folded his 4 wings and released a blood-red light that shot up to the sky to protect himself. Blood Sea, 10,000 slaves protect Master. The surging blood-red light was like a 1,000-foot-wide shield that protected Patriarch Shui Pao. The blood-red light surged like waves of blood. There were even tens of thousands of demonic shadows that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Boom! The huge golden sword struck the blood-red light and a deafening explosion erupted. Although a crack was formed in the blood-red light, countless blood-red flames spurted out. However, the huge golden sword sank into the blood sea and was quickly corroded, completely disappearing. Patriarch Shui Pao had successfully neutralized Ji Tianxing's attack and was not injured. Only then did he feel relieved. I thought you had broken through to the martial sage realm. I did not expect it to be like this. So what if your defense is comparable to a martial sage's? Your secret skill will not be able to do anything to me. Patriarch Shui Pao laughed proudly and waved his 6 arms again. He released a blood-red light that covered the sky and poured it down on Ji Tianxing. Endless blood sea. The blood-red light that covered the sky was like a flood that sealed off the sky and poured down on Ji Tianxing's body. In an instant, the area within a 200-mile radius turned into a blood sea. The waves in the blood sea surged up to the sky. The demonic shadows overlapped and attacked Ji Tianxing crazily. The blood sea had the power to corrode one's physical body and spiritual soul. It formed hundreds of spells and continuously attacked Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was trapped in the blood sea and had to bear the full force of Patriarch Shui Pao's attack. It would be difficult for him to escape in a short period of time. Moreover, he had to use his mana shield to resist the corrosion of the blood sea. The shield was constantly broken and repaired, draining his mana rapidly. If this dragged on for too long, his mana would be depleted. Then, his combat ability would weaken rapidly and he would be no match for Patriarch Shui Pao. Fortunately, Yun Yao relied on the protection of the reverse water divine sword. Not only did she resist the corrosion of the blood sea, but she also rushed to Ji Tianxing's vicinity. Tianxing, don't panic. I'll help you. Yun Yao's expression was cold as she shouted in a low voice. She flew to Ji Tianxing's side and held the reverse water divine sword with both hands. She slashed down with all her might. Sword bestowed by God, repel water and repel demons. The icy blue reverse water divine sword released a terrifying divine power. It formed 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword light and slashed at the raging blood sea. The sword light was like a bright moon that cut through the night sky and illuminated the world. It was like a thunderbolt that tore through the night and dispelled all darkness. Its power was like the wrath of a god. Its power was boundless. Boom! The sword light slashed at the blood sea, creating a loud sound that shook the universe. It spread thousands of miles in the void. The surging and evil sea of blood was actually split into two by the sword light, creating an abyss in the middle. The blood sea was broken. Endless blood light scattered in the void and quickly dissipated. The sword light moved forward with indomitable will. It slashed for hundreds of miles before stopping. The blood sea that Patriarch Xue Pao had condensed with all his strength was split in half by Yun Yao's sword. It fell into the void in pieces. Swoosh! The blood sea was broken. Patriarch Xue Pao also suffered a heavy blow and was sent flying in a sorry state. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing was shocked and excited. This is incredible! Yao Yao, this divine sword is so powerful that you can send Patriarch Xue Pao flying with just one slash? Yun Yao's face was pale. She held the reverse water divine sword with both hands and panted violently. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, she nodded and said while panting, "Yes, the sword that the divine master made himself and carries with him everywhere. Its power is naturally extraordinary. Especially since I have mastered the art of controlling the divine sword these few years. That's why I can use 30% of the divine sword's power and use this ultimate technique. However, with my current strength, I can only use it 3 times at most before I'm exhausted." Only then did Ji Tianxing understand the reason, and his excited mood immediately calmed down. At the same time, Patriarch Xue Pao flew back. He was only slightly injured. It did not affect his battle. His momentum was even more ferocious. "Ha ha! UB*TCH. Do you think you can kill me with the reverse water divine sword? What a joke! I spent half a year in the abyss of the blood sea. It's already an extreme path demonic weapon." Chapter 2039. Extreme path demonic weapon? Yun Yao frowned, and her serious expression became even more puzzled. Ji Tianxing explained, "Extreme path demonic weapon is one of the secret techniques of the ancient demons. It's extremely vicious and powerful. Using this secret technique can refine demons and demonic beasts into demonic dharma artifact. They'll be as tough as puppets and won't feel pain. But their souls and consciousness will be preserved. They'll still have the ability to think. In the ancient war of the gods, the demons refined the severely injured demons and demonic beasts into extreme path demonic weapons in order to preserve their combat power. That's an extremely powerful and terrifying team. Like the blood god, they're the most terrifying force of the demons." Yun Yao roughly understood what he meant. She became even more cautious when dealing with Patriarch Xue Pao. Moonlight Cascade. She charged at Patriarch Xue Pao again. She waved the reverse water divine sword and slashed out a 10-mile-wide white sword light. The sword light was as bright as the moon. It slashed at Patriarch Xue Pao like a cascade that covered the sky. Patriarch Xue Pao said arrogantly. But in reality, he didn't dare to underestimate the power of the reverse water divine sword. He could only fight back with all his might. Ji Tianxing took this opportunity to attack with his sword. He joined forces with Yun Yao. Sky-splitting sword. The sword light was as bright as the sun. It cut through the dark and cold void and slashed at Patriarch Xue Pao. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds resounded in the void. Patriarch Xue Pao used his secret technique to release 4 blood dragons to block Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's attack. the two sides started fighting in the void. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. As the battle became more and more intense, the three of them left the remains of the divine warship and moved into the void. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao joined forces and fought with Patriarch Xue Pao for thousands of rounds. But they still couldn't kill him. Patriarch Xue Pao was severely injured. He looked terrible. 2 of his 4 blood wings had been chopped off. The remaining 2 were in tatters. 2 of the 6 arms had been shattered, and the remaining 4 were badly mutilated. In addition, his entire body was riddled with wounds, and there were barely any intact pieces of flesh. Dark purple demon blood seeped out of the numerous wounds on his body, turning him into a bloody man. If Patriarch Xue Pao had not been refined into an extreme Dao demonic weapon, his body would have been destroyed long ago. However, things were different now. His physical body had been refined with a secret technique, and his defensive power had increased by several times. Even though he was severely injured, he could still retain 30 to 40% of his combat strength and tenaciously resist Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's siege. As for Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, their injuries were not light either. Their hair was disheveled, their white robes were stained with blood, their faces were ghastly pale, and their breathing was somewhat chaotic. After fighting for 2 hours, the 2 of them had used up 60 to 70% of their magic power. Their battle prowess had also weakened a lot. However, the 2 of them refused to give up before killing Patriarch Xue Pao. 5-colored divine lightning. Meteor fall. The 2 of them gritted their teeth and continued to use their secret techniques to increase the pace of their attacks. Patriarch Xue Pao's power was getting weaker and weaker, and his injuries were getting worse. He was forced to retreat, and it was difficult for him to withstand the attack. Patriarch Xue Pao was about to lose. He could hold on for another 15 minutes at most, and then he would be killed by the couple. However, at this critical moment, a dark purple flowing light came from not far away. Swoosh! Inside the dark purple flowing light was a demon more than 10 feet tall, wearing a red robe. It was the great demon saint. His clothes were ragged, his hair was messy, and his entire body was covered in blood. His entire left arm was dangling weakly. At first glance, the great demon saint looked like he was in a mess, as if he had been severely injured. However, that was not the case. He was only slightly injured, and his strength was still as powerful as ever. Black Dragon Fist. Like a ghost, he teleported behind Ji Tianxing, raised his right fist and punched towards him. The 2 of them were only 10,000 feet apart. When Ji Tianxing realized that something was wrong, it was already too late, and there was no way for him to dodge. Bam! The giant black dragon fist landed on Ji Tianxing, and sent him flying 10 miles away. While he was still in the air, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire back was covered in cracks, and pale golden blood was seeping out of them. Fortunately, his body had been tempered thousands of times, and his defense was extremely strong. That was why he was able to block the great demon saint's punch. Otherwise, the great demonic saint's punch would have turned him into dust on the spot. No! Yun Yao saw Ji Tianxing being attacked with her own eyes, and her face was filled with shock. She was extremely worried. Instinctively, she rushed over and tried to save Ji Tianxing. However, the great demon saint had already predicted her reaction. His right fist turned into a claw, and a black light shot out from it. Black Dragon Palm. The black dragon palm shadow that blotted out the sky carried a domineering might that could suppress everything as it struck Yun Yao. Although Yun Yao saw that things were not going well, she quickly waved her divine sword to block the attack. However, her cultivation level was too low. How could she block the great demon saint's attack? Kaboom! Bam! The sword chi in the sky was smashed into pieces, and Yun Yao was also hit by the black dragon palm. Blood spurted out of her 7 orifices. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe the great demon saint did it on purpose. After flying for 10 miles, she landed right next to Ji Tianxing. The great demon saint had used a powerful attack to severely injure the two of them. By the time she and Ji Tianxing wiped the blood off their faces and regained their composure, Patriarch Xue Pao had charged over again. Ji Tianxing, it's time for you to die. Patriarch Xue Pao was smug and he sneered. He held a white bone spear and thrust it at them at lightning speed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao quickly dodged the attack and cast spells to block Patriarch Xue Pao's attack. At the same time, their hearts sank and they became more worried. Damn it! Isn't the great demon saint fighting with Luoli? Why did he suddenly appear? This is not good. Could it be that Luoli is no match for the great demon saint and has been killed? Ji Tianxing knew that Luoli was no match for the great demon saint. However, he could not believe that the great demon saint could kill Luoli. Just as he and Yun Yao were retreating, the great demon saint was closing in on them, trying to kill them on the spot. At the critical moment, two cold sword chi suddenly flashed and attacked the great demon saint and Patriarch Xue Pao. Swoosh! Swoosh! Cold light flashed and sword chi swept out. It was Luoli. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was covered in blood. Her clothes were soaked in blood, and she looked extremely miserable. Her whole body was covered with hideous wounds. There were hundreds of them, and they were so deep that her bones could be seen. It was a miracle that her body had not collapsed after being severely injured to this extent. She waved the still water dual swords with all her strength and stabbed out two sword chi to save Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The great demon saint dodged one of the sword chi. The other sword chi stabbed Patriarch Xue Pao, and a bloody hole appeared in his chest. Demonic blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 2040. Although Luoli was severely injured, she was at the end of her rope. Although she was no match for the great demon saint, she was still able to defeat Patriarch Xue Pao. After defeating Patriarch Xue Pao, she dashed toward the great demon saint crazily and slashed out dozens of sword rays. Swoosh! Swoosh! 64 giant swords that were thousands of feet long formed an oval-shaped sword array and enveloped the great demon saint. The great demon saint wanted to kill Ji Tianxing, but he could only give up and focus on defending against Luoli's attack. While attacking the great demon saint, Luoli shouted to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao through telepathy, "You too! What are you waiting for? Run away! I'll hold the great demon saint back! Run away! Quick!" Her voice was hoarse and low, and her tone was filled with grief and anxiety. At this moment, she was no longer as noble, elegant, cold, and holy as before. It was as if she was a completely different person. In the face of death, she could no longer care about her manners and dignity. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were severely injured, and they were trying to suppress their injuries. Hearing Luoli's shout, the two of them were stunned and realized the seriousness of the situation. **T. Luoli can't defeat the great demon saint, and she's severely injured. Ji Tianxing frowned and looked worried. Yun Yao's expression turned even uglier. She was extremely worried. On the surface, it looks like she's attacking fiercely, but it's actually a last-ditch effort. She's trying to hold the great demon saint back so that we can have more time to run away. Tianxing, we can't hesitate. We have to run away now. Of course, Ji Tianxing knew that they had already lost this battle. If they continued to fight, they would definitely lose their lives. However, he was unwilling to run away just like that. He turned his head and looked at the void not far away. Patriarch Xue Pao was covered in blood, and there was a huge hole in his chest that was still bleeding. He could not feel any pain, and he was trying to suppress his injuries. He quickly gathered a ball of bloody light and covered his body. "Yao Yao, give me some time," Ji Tianxing said in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he forced his heavily injured body to rush toward Patriarch Xue Pao like a bolt of lightning. Shua! In the blink of an eye, he had crossed 30 miles and arrived in front of Patriarch Xue Pao. Patriarch Xue Pao immediately woke up and raised his head to look at Ji Tianxing. Fear flashed in his eyes as he shouted, "What do you want to do, Ji Tianxing? Luoli has already been defeated, and you guys are about to die at the hands of the great demon saint. Do you still want to put up a desperate struggle?" Ji Tianxing didn't waste any time talking nonsense with him. He directly raised his right hand and fiercely slapped out, "God-slaying spear." Boundless golden divine flames gushed out of his palm and formed a divine spear, thrusting toward Patriarch Xue Pao. The divine spear was 30 meters long, and it was burning with fierce golden flames, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. Patriarch Xue Pao's spiritual soul had been locked down. Being in the empty void, there was no way for him to escape. Feeling the terrifying power of the god-slaying spear, he felt fear from the bottom of his soul. His eyes widened in shock. "No!" Patriarch Xue Pao roared in horror. He instinctively raised his arms and spread out 2 tattered wings to protect his vital parts. He still didn't want to give up, and he desperately teleported 10 miles away. However, the god-slaying spear was so fast that it instantly pierced through 10 miles of the void and hit him. Boom! A deafening sound burst out, shaking the void and spreading for thousands of miles. A dazzling golden flame bloomed in the void like a mushroom cloud. The void within 3,000 miles was lit up by the golden light. Patriarch Xue Pao's body was already covered with wounds and was on the verge of being destroyed. After suffering such a heavy blow, his physical body collapsed on the spot. He was blasted into billions of pieces and scattered in the void. Even his weak spiritual soul was pierced through by the god-slaying spear and shattered into several pieces. The golden divine flames surged and burned the pieces of flesh and spiritual soul into ashes. It was all over. Even though Patriarch Xue Pao had been refined into an extreme path demonic weapon, he couldn't escape the fate of death. In the end, he was still killed by Ji Tianxing. Not even his bones were left behind. Ji Tianxing looked at the golden flames in the sky expressionlessly. After confirming that Patriarch Xue Pao was dead, he turned around and left. Yun Yao hurriedly rushed forward to meet him. Despite her heavy injuries, she dragged him towards the wreckage of the divine warship. Dozens of miles away, Luoli was still crazily attacking the great demon saint. She didn't care about her life at all. She was fighting with her life on the line. Even though she wasn't as powerful as the great demon saint, she was still able to stall the great demon saint and prevent him from escaping. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao returned to the remains of the divine battleship and stood at the front of the ship. The two of them turned around and looked at Luoli with complicated expressions. Yun Yao was worried. She sent a voice transmission to Luoli anxiously. "Luoli, run. Don't fight." Luoli ignored her and continued to attack the great demon saint. At the same time, she replied, "No. I have to stall the great demon saint. Only then will you have a chance to escape. If I also run away, the 3 of us will die here." Yun Yao understood the meaning behind her words. She became even more anxious and tried to persuade her. "Luoli, don't be stupid. If you don't run away, you will die. If the 3 of us work together." Before she could finish speaking, Luoli interrupted her. She said in a low and hoarse voice, "Before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, I said that it is my responsibility to help you find the divine orb. No matter what, I will protect you and let you return to the Luotian Mountain safely. I have made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more." Yun Yao saw that Luoli was determined to die, but she was still so stubborn. Her heart ached, and her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. At this time, Luoli turned around and glanced at Ji Tianxing. She said in a cold and indifferent voice, "Ji Tianxing, Yao Yao is the best girl in the world. She is destined to become the god of Luo River in the future. No matter what, please cherish her and protect her. Don't let her be wronged. I know you hate me, but I am not targeting you on purpose. I am doing this for Yao Yao. Go, take Yao Yao and leave." Send her back to the Luotian mountains safely. From now on, you and I don't owe each other anything." Luo Li's voice was calm and cold, revealing her determination. After she finished speaking, she no longer cared about Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. She rushed toward the great demon sage without any regard for her own safety. Her whole body was covered in blue flames. At this time, she held her head high and her chest out. She had regained her usual cold and arrogant attitude. Her expression was as calm as water. However, her flesh and blood and the soul in her mind were burning fiercely. The blue flames that soared into the sky lit up the void for thousands of miles. It was like a phoenix spreading its wings and soaring in the sky. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's bodies shook. They immediately understood her intentions. Their pupils shrank and they subconsciously cried out in grief. "No. Luo Li, don't self-destruct." However, Luo Li could no longer hear them. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Soul to Luo River, no more reincarnation. Chapter 2041. Boom! A loud explosion shook the heavens, and endless blue flames lit up the sky. A mass of dazzling and magnificent ice-blue flames blotted out the sky and blotted out the sky. It was like the brightest star in the sky and the most beautiful fireworks in a festival. However, it was formed by Luo Li's soul. No matter how dazzling it was sad and sorrowful, and it made one's heart clench. Even though Ji Tianqing had a strong will, seeing Luo Li explode and die with his own eyes still made him feel sad. Thinking back to the words he had said to anger Luo Li, he felt guilty. The resolute words that Luo Li had said before she blew herself up still lingered in his mind, not dissipating for a long time. Yun Yao's eyes stared at the blue flames in the sky, and her body started to tremble. Her face was as white as a sheet, and 2 drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. Deep sorrow filled her mind and caused her heart to ache. All sorts of memories surfaced in her mind. When she had just arrived at the Luotian mountain, she was in an unfamiliar environment, and she was sad and lonely. It was Luo Li who came to her side, accompanied her, and helped her. All kinds of scenes, including Luo Li's frown, smile, and words, were still vivid in her mind. But now they were separated forever, and they would never be able to see each other again. Swoosh! The flames from Luo Li's explosion spread in all directions. The icy blue shockwave had the power to destroy everything, and it swept across a radius of a few thousand miles. Seeing the shockwave, Ji Tianqing was shocked. He hurriedly pulled Yun Yao away from the wreckage of the divine battleship and flew toward the quicksand. The black sand poured down from the black hole like a flood and entered the wreckage of the divine battleship. If they wanted to escape back to the ghost desert, they could only go against the flow and pass through the black hole. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing hugged the heartbroken Yun Yao tightly, passed through the black sand, and entered the black hole. When the destructive icy blue shockwave engulfed the wreckage of the divine battleship, the 2 of them had already disappeared. In the next moment, the 2 of them passed through the black hole and returned to the ghost desert. Shwa! A ball of dazzling golden light wrapped tightly around Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao as it flew out of the black sand vortex. Yun Yao was already an arrow at the end of its flight, unable to protect herself. Passing through the spatial black hole, one would have to endure the attacks of the spatial crack and the power of the void. It was Ji Tianqing who used his dermic powers to form a shield to protect him and Yun Yao, allowing them to pass through the black hole smoothly. Even though he succeeded, his vitality was greatly damaged, and his injuries became even more severe. Fortunately, he and Yun Yao had finally escaped from the void and were out of danger. However, before he could see the scene around him clearly, he heard bursts of exclamations and shouts. "Oh my God! He actually managed to escape back. It's Ji Tianqing. He is Ji Tianqing. What are you waiting for? Kill him! The great demon saint has ordered us to tear this man into pieces. We must not let him go." Shouts of shock and excitement sounded around the vortex one after another. Ji Tianqing immediately recognized that those were the voices of many powerful demon clan cultivators. He raised his head and looked around. Only then did he see the situation around him clearly. He saw dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators standing around the black sand vortex with a radius of hundreds of miles. There were more than a dozen tribulation stage cultivators wearing black armor and holding swords and dharma treasures. There were also more than a dozen ferocious and ever-changing blood gods illusions. In addition, there were more than 20 demonic beasts that were as large as mountains and had ferocious and violent auras. Whether it was the powerful demon clan cultivators, blood gods illusions, or demonic beasts, they all stared at him excitedly, their eyes full of bloodthirsty murderous intent. There was no need for anyone to give an order. All the powerful demon clan cultivators and blood gods illusions used powerful secret techniques to besiege him. Suddenly, overwhelming bloody light, demonic qi, and dharma spell shadows drowned Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao like a monstrous flood. Both of them were seriously injured. It was not easy for them to escape from the void, but they were besieged by so many powerful demon clan cultivators. They were in imminent danger and their lives were at stake. However, Ji Tianqing had known that the great demon saint had brought a large number of powerful cultivators with him, so he was prepared. When the Dharma spell shadows fell from the sky, he held the seriously injured Yun Yao in his left arm and waved his right hand to release a sky full of thunderbolts. 5-colored divine thunderbolts. The 5-colored thunderbolts with the power to annihilate everything penetrated the bloody light in the sky and scattered around the black sand vortex. Suddenly, several powerful demon clan cultivators were hit by the thunderbolts and turned into black ashes on the spot. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing took Yun Yao through the huge hole, rushed out of the black sand vortex, and escaped from the encirclement of the demon clan cultivators. Many powerful demon clan cultivators reacted immediately and chased after them. However, Ji Tianqing had already summoned the black dragon. Swoosh! The black dragon carried him and Yun Yao and flew across the sky at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the gray clouds. Dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators chased desperately for thousands of miles, but they completely lost track of the black dragon and could only return empty-handed. The power of Luo Li's self-destruction was, of course, extremely terrifying. The icy blue shockwave was enough to destroy thousands of miles of heaven and earth. Any living being below the Saint Realm would not be able to survive. However, no matter how powerful the shockwave was, it could not destroy the wreckage of the divine ship, nor could it damage the golden light seal of the 5 elements world. The shockwave hit the golden light seal, but it was blocked and quickly dissipated. After a long time, the icy blue flames that covered thousands of miles of the void gradually disappeared. The void returned to silence once more, leaving no trace behind, as if nothing had happened. Luo Li had also completely disappeared, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Thousands of miles away from the wreckage of the divine ship, in the empty void, a figure floated quietly. It was the great demon saint, who was seriously injured and unconscious. The red robe and armor that he was wearing, as well as his long hair, had all disappeared. His body, which was covered with black dragon scales, was also covered with dense cracks, and thousands of drops of demon blood seeped out. At this moment, he was like a porcelain bowl that was covered with cracks, and would shatter with a touch. However, his injuries were not limited to this. Not only was his physical body on the verge of collapse, but his soul was also seriously injured, and he was unconscious. He had lost consciousness, and was like a leaf, a piece of black paper, quietly floating in the void. After an unknown period of time, perhaps half a month, perhaps a month, finally, the great demon saint's eyelids moved, and he gradually opened his eyes. Damn bitch! She did not hesitate to self-destruct to injure me, how hateful! His lips moved, and he muttered in a venomous tone. Then, he slowly sat up, took out a pile of black, purple, and red elixirs, and consumed them. After a few days of cultivation, he had recovered some of his vitality, and he flew back leisurely. When he returned to the wreckage of the divine ship, he was stunned when he saw that it was not damaged at all, and there was not even a trace left behind. What kind of metal is this? It withstood the power of a martial saint's self-destruction, and it was not damaged at all?